Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, get your cocktails ready because the show's about to start.
Looking a little ordinary? Is it lacking something awesome? Well, head out to your local liquor store and pick up something extraordinary. Grab a bottle of Old Humble Straight Whiskey or Old Humble Special Reserve. They're clean, smooth, easy drinking whiskeys that taste the way whiskey should taste. From humble beginnings to an extraordinary finish, Old Humble whiskeys are what your bar needs today. Walk tall, be awesome, and drink humble. Old Humble Straight Whiskey and Old Humble Special Reserve. Get yours today.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes. Be awesome, walk tall, drink humble, all that stuff. Get yours today. I don't remember what she ends with. Get yours today. It's very important to remember to get yours today because I'm the Old Humble guy. This is the Old Humble Distilling Company's channel. Our counter up there is updating to 1870. Hot damn. We have passed 1870 subscribers. I'm the Old Humble guy. This is the Old Humble Distilling Company's channel. I make and sell delicious whiskey, and this is the Wednesday night whiskey happy hour. I've got my big old mug of water, but we are also having where's my whiskey? There it is. I'll drink out of this bottle. Yeah, this is the Distiller Select bottle. Our Boomtown Bourbon is what we're drinking tonight, and I am super duper excited because we're at the end of an era. Our Boomtown Bourbon, these clear labels, our Boomtown Bourbon with these stylish clear labels. These are a vanishing breed. We've made our next to last shipment of Boomtown Bourbon. Of this Boomtown Bourbon, we've made our next to last shipment already. We have a special order of 72-hour blackout Boomtown Bourbon. Cheers, everybody! Our opening shot. Cheers. May the road always rise to meet your feet and the wind always blow at your back. Cheers. But yeah, super duper excited. Well, let me start from the beginning. It's been a month and change since I have gone live in this format with our happy hour program. I've had other stuff to do. I've been busy running around, working on state reports, federal reports, doing taxes, doing all the stuff, business stuff that, you got to do when you run a business. I should probably button my shirt. Not look quite like a degenerate. Leave it open? What do y'all think? Leave it open? A little fur there. Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it open. But I've been busy. We've been doing stuff. Had a spring break just last week. Ran out to Central Texas to see the to see a couple of colleges and take in some blue bonnets. It was a beautiful time, absolutely beautiful time. But I wanted to kick back into the flow with our happy hours. Probably do a couple a week. Do this show tonight. Do another show on maybe Monday nights. A forum show, something. A whiskey happy hour. But definitely doing more from the distillery itself. I've got a smudge right in the middle of the lens on these. Doing more stuff from the distillery. Y'all seen a lot of the day in the life stuff that we've done. I want to go at least once a week from the distillery. The projects that we're working on in the distillery, actual bottling of whiskey, labeling of whiskey, uh, the projects that we're working on. But also when we do the live show, this show, I want to get back to the standard format that I've used in the past, where we start off with distillery updates, like what I'm doing now. Then we go to a little bit of maybe some whiskey news that that's going on in the world of whiskey. Maybe some current events. We'll hold current events till later on when we get into chat. But then the monologue part, where I actually talk about the topic of the show to kick off the conversation. Because you go to a bar, you go to a bar, you go to a club. Well, not so much a club, but you go to a bar, you go to hang out, you sit down at the lounge, you order your drink, you talk to the random stranger next to you, and you go, "So, you heard anything good in the news lately?" And that person says, "I've been thinking all day long about the scientific method." And they have some kind of thing that they've had on their mind, and you have something you've had on your mind. You want to talk about it. The way we used to do happy hours when we went and talked to people in person before the pandemic, that's how this show started. And I wanted to get back to first principles, and we're going to get back to doing exactly that, where we start with the updates for the distillery. We go into maybe a little bit of whiskey news if there's anything big on the horizon, or in our rearview mirror, and then talk about the topic du jour. And today's topic du jour is the history of the scientific method. Scientific method I find to be fascinating. It was actually a topic that was inspired by one of my viewers, the goddamn bacon. Brought this idea. It was kind of it wasn't on purpose. It was kind of sideways. But I'll get into all that in a little bit. And then, of course, once we're done with all that, we'll get into chat. We'll do the standard Old Humble After Dark. It's usually around a half past, a quarter after when we start talking about that. So that's the plan for the thing. For the general flow of the show, we'll get back to the normal general flow of the show, and that's the kind of the idea. So, whiskey updates from the distillery. I am happy to announce that we are well past our 1,000 subscribers, and we are heading steadily towards 2,000 subscribers. We're at 1871 right now. So that means I've scheduled our 2,000 subscriber special. Ta-da! March 31st at I think I said 8:30 p.m. It's a Friday night show, 8:30 p.m. March 31st. I will be giving away a bottle of our legendary Boomtown bourbon, as well as a shot glass tote that I've shown off, that I've been making at the distillery. I've posted a picture of it. I've been making them physically making them on site at the distillery. Here is a picture of the hip slung shot glass tote. There it is. Uh, the single shot glass holster, the hip holster. Uh, Shot glass tote that comes with the bottle. So I'll be giving away a bottle, a shot glass tote, and that'll be at the end of this month. And like I said earlier, our clear label Boomtown bourbon that you see right here. These labels are a vanishing breed. There's not going to be many more of them. You will have in your hand one of the last of those bottles. And when it comes time to announce what we're going to do next, that announcement will be coming in due time. But next up for the distillery, after we do our 2,000 subscriber special, will be, let's see here, that's the end of March. Then we have April. April is when we will make an announcement as far as the Boomtown bourbon, the legendary Boomtown bourbon, and what's coming next for that particular brand, what's filling that spot on our menu. And then in May, we will be releasing or is it in April we're releasing our 72-hour blackout? Or I think it's April we're releasing the 72-hour blackout bourbon, and then May we're making the announcement on what comes next for our Boomtown bourbon in general. There's a whole lot of stuff coming up. And we're going. My road show returns in April. I'm going to be roaming around the state of Texas and the city of Houston, doing tastings at Total Wines that have my bourbon. I'll be doing Total Wine tastings. I'll be doing the Texas Whiskey Fest. I'll be doing the HTX Whiskey Weekend in the Woodlands on the north side of town. And then I'll be adding tastings at Specs through the latter half of April and into May. We're busy. We're going to be busy. And speaking of Mr. Great Shot. Speaking of Austin, speaking of Boomtown, Mr. Great Shot is in the house, an Austinite. My good man, Mr. Great Shot, at the Muller and Sunset Valley Specs locations in Austin, Texas. You can find our Boomtown bourbon. Just for you, I made sure that they carried that bourbon in those stores so that you will be able to get your hand on those bourbons. Mr. Lopez, cheers to you. Welcome to the party. Cheers. If you are local to the state of Texas, you will also be able to get your hands on our legendary Boomtown bourbon. It's being rolled out to the whole state through Total Wines. Specifically, right now, we're in the city of Houston and Austin, but we are expanding that footprint out to Dallas, Fort Worth, and the surrounding areas for those guys as well. If you're not local to the state of Texas, if you're not local to the major metros in Texas, shoot me an email. We'll talk. We'll see if we can work a way out to get that deliciousness in your hands. But again, as I was saying, we are facing the end of an era as far as our Boomtown bourbon goes. So if you can get it in your hands, you absolutely should want to do that before it is too late. I'm over here doing studio stuff behind the scenes. You can't see it, but I'm working. I'm fiddling with the pictures and stuff that I see. Okay, it looks like it's good. See, look, cut. There we go. And cut back. Cut. There we go. All right, so that's that. 2,000 subscriber special into the month, giving away a bottle of whiskey. Can we get that graphic back up? There it is. 2,000 subscriber special. That thumbnail will be updated to show the giveaway that we've got, the tote, the bottle, and all that stuff. And now I think it is, right at 10:15, quarter past the hour. It is time to get into the topic of the day, kids. So I come to the show with a topic in mind. I come to, something has been, gnawing away at the back of my mind over the past couple of weeks. It's some kind of dumb topic. I look it up and check it out. So I try not to have it be too narrow of a topic. Like a few weeks ago, we did ancient civilization, or I guess before we went on hiatus, I did ancient civilizations. We've done militias, the meaning of militias, how militias are organized, what militias do. We did the philosophical discussion of what is a militia. Is three guys with a gun or with three guys, a six-pack, and three deer rifles, are they a militia? We've done that. We've done what's the nature of good, and a broad discussion like that. Does good and evil exist outside of society, right? Or is it just literally a construct? So does good and evil only exist when you have two people? Because if you're by yourself, is there such a thing as good and evil? I've had all these, broad ranging. You can go look back at all the stuff. We've talked about Hubble. We've talked about James Webb. We've talked about all kinds of stuff. We've had trivia nights. We've had topics galore. Because something nags away at the back of my mind. I'm like, I ought to go check that out, and I go check it out, and I do some research, find out what it is. It's not like an in-depth research thing. I'm not like going and digging into a full-on research paper. 9 times out of 10, I look up a Wikipedia article, check out a couple of other things, and that's pretty much it. It's no different than back when I was a kid. Yes, I used to be a kid. Back when I was a kid, actually just opening up an encyclopedia. Is that my lovely wife? Opening up an Encyclopedia Britannica, looking at an article about Elvis and being, okay, now I know about Elvis. Mr. Lopez is in Cali. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Not everybody's perfect. I lie. I love California. It's a beautiful state. But when I get these topics, I go do a little bit I do a moderate amount of research. When it came to militias, I had to do a little bit more research, looking up statutes and organization of militias and roles of militias and what states have them, what states don't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What election laws, empirical, all this stuff that we've done. Some require more investigation than others. Tonight's topic was actually really simple. Scientific method, the history of the scientific method, and here's how it originally started. We were having a discussion God, probably 2 months ago. We were having a discussion about uh, believing in the science, not believing in science, checking the science out, da da da. Throwing the words around, Bacon, goddamn Bacon, made the comment that well, the science changes. We change. When we find out new stuff, the science changes. And I was like, no, the science doesn't change. It's the interpretation of the data, the interpretation of the facts. The knowledge of the facts change. I mean, it's not like Saturn's moons just appeared when Galileo first saw them, right? And that got me to thinking, like, wait a minute, like discovery and science, and like science as we know it hasn't always been science, right? Because there was a point in time before which science was just philosophy. Right, there's a bunch of Greek dudes sitting around a table or sitting around a marketplace, sitting around an open air emporium, whatever, drinking wine, saying, what if all the stuff is like you like cut it up into littler things and it just becomes smaller stuff. There was the philosophy of atomization, where like tables are really just made of a collection of little tables, and you cut a table up enough and you look down a little bitty bitty bits, it's just a little bitty bitty table. Or wood is just wood all the way down to the smallest, and you get to the point where you can't subdivide it, and because it's still like that's what science used to be. Like we didn't discover the first five planets. We didn't discover Mars and Mercury and Venus and Jupiter and Saturn. We didn't discover those. We just knew they were always out there, right? The first planet that we discovered was Uranus, and then Neptune, and then eventually the protoplanet Pluto. We didn't discover Saturn. We just sat up there and looked, and it was there. Now, we didn't discover Saturn any more than we discovered the moon. It was there at night. We just knew it was there. It was always there. We didn't discover the stars. We didn't discover trees. We didn't discover. Now, where it changes from philosophy to science largely is kind of a stylistic debate, because to a large extent they're these old guys, moderately old guys, they were probably in their late 20s, sitting around drinking wine, discussing, thinking, theorizing, teaching other kids, younger kids, how to think logically and progress through logical a logical progression of factual ideas. That really kind of shifted, not surprisingly, around Aristotle's time in Greece. And I'm of course, being a student of Western philosophy and Western culture, I'm thinking of the Greeks. These same ideas kind of popped up around the same time in India and China, not surprisingly, considering there was trade going back and forth. The Greeks probably borrowed it from those guys, to be quite honest. Trade going from the east to the west, west to the east. These guys talked back and forth. I mean, they didn't write letters, but uh, uh, missionary missionaries from the east, scholars from the west, going back and forth, cross pollinating ideas. These ideas, they popped up around the same time. They probably shared these ideas around the same time. And they had a nugget of a thought over here and a nugget of a thought over there, and they talked about it together. And they're like, oh yeah, maybe that's not a bad idea. So around Aristotle's time, was something, I think it was like 400 something BCE, sometime around that era. That's when you get out of just the theory of stuff and into the rather out of the philosophy of stuff and into the experimentation of stuff, where you come up with an idea and you think of a way to physically, empirically, reliably, and repeatably prove that idea. So this notion that you could like cut things down into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller things, the nature of nature, what things are made of, the ether, the fire and the stone and the the base elements, and being able to run to hypothesize about something and then test the hypothesis, and then have results from that hypothesis and then give those results to other people so that they can look at the results and they can run the experiment and they can test the hypothesis. This is the core of the scientific method, and this didn't exist prior to, it certainly didn't exist prior to Aristotle, but it didn't really exist in kind of a codified academic form until probably around 500, 600 AD. So even when it started off as this idea around 400, it was still another 1,000 years before this became a discipline, which I just find to be fascinating that human beings were roaming around in civilization. Human beings were roaming around in civilization from about 4500 BC to about 500 AD. So a full 5,000 years before we sat around and said, well, what if we like tried to discover shit on purpose? Because before then it was literally, we were a species that was just FAF up. We were just fucking around, finding out what happens if we drop a hammer on our thumb. Oh, it's gonna hurt. Well, how long is it gonna take you? I don't know. Why does it hurt? I don't know. What's the thing? I don't know. Just, I don't know. Put some honey on it, or squirt it with Robitussin, or wrap it up with this frog leaf, or whatever we didn't know. We were just, for 5,000 years, we were just whatever. And it's like, I don't know. It's like a cat stops. Yeah, a cat stops our grain from being destroyed by rats. So I guess we need cats to keep our grains from not being destroyed. So get a cat. The cats are magical. That was 5,000 years. We went by cats are magical, so we have to have cats to make grain work. That was people. That was people for 5,000 years. We didn't know why cats worked. We didn't know what they did to stop our grain from becoming poison. We didn't know. And it turns out they eat rats. But we didn't know that for like 5,000 years. We had no idea. And then, we probably had this intuitive understanding. Like, you take away the cats and all of a sudden you have a bunch of rats. We thought as a people that flies just materialized on meat. That maggots that the meat bore maggots. The maggots came from meat. We thought that was the case until like 1200, 1500 AD, when some dude said, hey, what if I take some meat and put it under glass? Will it make maggots? And then this dude did it. And he was like, oh, look, the meat doesn't spontaneously generate maggots. It was that long from the birth of civilization, from the birth of mankind, 25,000 years ago. 25,000 years ago until about 1500, 1600 AD. Dude, we were dumb as hell for most of our existence. We still are dumb as hell, but the difference is, rather than being dumb as hell, we have an organized, strategically organized methodology for vanquishing that ignorance, right? We have a way to do it, and that's what's really cool about the science. That's what's really cool about this notion. Why it like popped into my head, why it hasn't left my head, is because we as people have an organized, regimented, disciplined way to vanquish our ignorance. And yet there's still a bunch of dumb, idiot, moron motherfuckers who are running around thinking that the earth is flat. There's still a bunch of dumb, idiot, moron motherfuckers running around saying, oh, vaccines don't work. There's still a bunch of dumb, idiot, moron motherfuckers who are running around literally denying the existence of reality around them. They're literally saying dumb things like, well, the most obvious thing is that there was this vast, amazing civilization that just vanished. They were far more advanced than we are, even though they don't know how to use metals. They were far more advanced than we are, but they just vanished. Poof. But see, here's the cool thing. We have a rigorous, systematic way to test these dumb, idiotic claims. We have systematic ways of doing that. And that's what for most of our existence, we didn't. Most of our existence, we didn't. But we've had it for 1,000 years, for 1,500 years now, since like 400 or 500 BC or 400 or 500 AD. We've had this systematic, regimented way of doing it. You make an observation, you create a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis with an experiment, you look at the findings. If the findings are wrong, you modify the hypothesis and go back, and if the findings don't support the hypothesis, you go back and modify the hypothesis, or you modify the experiment, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And if the findings meet the criteria, if you confirm the hypothesis, then you've modified the hypothesis enough. Now you take that data and you give it to somebody else and let them test it. And they can test the hypothesis. They can say, and guarantee they're going to try and prove you wrong because they want to get the Nobel Prize. You don't get the Nobel Prize. They want to get the Nobel Prize. And they're going to test your hypothesis. They're going to test your data. They're going to test your hypothesis. And they're going to look at it and go, see, obviously, right here, here's your problem right here. It doesn't have a gas tank in it, and it's missing the spark plug. You can't do that. I mean, we've done this dozens and hundreds and hundreds of times since the late 90s with cold fusion, with hot fusion, with Higgs boson, all these awesome, kick-ass, amazing discoveries. The most recent thing, they find a whole set of galaxies on the edge of the known universe, on the edge of known space, and they're like, wow, maybe we have to modify our hypothesis about how the universe formed, or the age of the universe, or that doesn't change the fact that the universe exists, right? Like they can modify the hypothesis without just destroying everything we know about everything. It modifies the hypothesis. And you find something, you have a timeline of human existence, you find something that doesn't meet the timeline, you modify it. Okay, well, maybe we can push the timeline back a little bit. But that doesn't change the fact that people were here. It doesn't change the fact that technology builds on technology that you already know, and it speeds up in its development, speeds up in its development, speeds up in its development. If you have a highly advanced civilization from eons ago, they don't just vanish, they don't just disappear. It's not how things work. And we know that's not how things work because we can observe it, we can test it, we can verify it, we can validate it, we can take those findings and give it to somebody else, and then somebody else does the same damn thing. That's the amazing thing about the world we live in is that you don't have to rely on only your senses. You can rely on the work that other people are doing, and you know you can rely on the work that other people do because we have documentation. What the hell is that? Y'all can't hear that. Something. Yeah, hang on. There's a door that just opened. I hope somebody just opened the door. Hello? No? I don't know what that was. All right. Anyway, but we can rely on other people's observations. We can rely. Most of our knowledge comes from other people's observations. Most of our knowledge, like 90%, 99% of our knowledge comes from other people's observations. You know about how gravity works, not because of your experiments on gravity, but because of Isaac Newton's and all the people that came after Isaac Newton, Einstein, all those other people. You know what China looks like because of pictures that other people took from China. You know what Australia looks like. You know that the moon is upside down because we can see pictures from people in Australia who take pictures of the moon and it's upside down from the perspective of Australia. That's one of the ways we know that the earth is round. This is one of the greatest era of human existence, without question. And with that note of optimism, now we go to Old Humble After Dark. We go to chat. Let's go to chat. Let's open up. We're going to open us up to all the current events Anything you want to talk. You want to talk about the scientific method and the history of science? Let's talk about that. You want to talk about SVB bank failing? You want to talk about the war in Ukraine? You want to talk about Russia's war in Ukraine? You want to talk about I don't know what a fuck all. Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about everything. And by the way, 1870. 2,000 subs at the end of the month. 2,000 subs by March 31st. 2,000 subs we are giving away. If we don't hit 2,000 subs by March 31st, I'm not giving away that bottle of whiskey. Fuck all y'all. I will be petty as fuck. It's not that hard for you people to go out. All y'all to go out and open up a new account and subscribe a second time. It's third time, fifth time, ninth time. It's not that hard. Get out there and do it. All right, let's switch. All right, chat is up. Let me open up my chat window. Where are we? I need to turn on my timestamps so that I know how far away I am from reality. Where are we? 10:30. See, just a 15-minute monologue. I take care of my peoples. All right. Who dis? New phone. All right, so that's the first comment. Who dis? New phone from Mr. Great Chat. Great. Fantastic. Terrific. Actually, my comment was the first comment, but for some reason it's not there. Mr. Lopez here for the first time, heading out. Fortunately, I'm in Cali. Right, and that is where I stopped looking at chat. That was the last comment that I saw. All right. Goddamn Bacon answered the call. Yeah, I mentioned your name and you showed up. It's like Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice, bacon, bacon, bacon. Freshen up y'all's cocktails. I'll give y'all a second. Freshen up your cocktails. And this is usually the point in the show where I get drastically behind on chat. Like, I'm 12 and a half minutes behind on chat right now. Which means Norton just popped up trying to sell me stuff. They can fuck off. I'm 12 and a half minutes behind on chat. I will endeavor to not get worse than that, but I guarantee I will become 500 messages behind at some point. Okay, so Bacon gets summoned at 10:18. That was early on. But there you go. Where are we at, by the way? I'm gonna go. Hang on, I gotta check my analytics real quick. Because I'm also in the midst of our. I'm also in the midst of our Project 360, which is an effort to get 360 hours a month. 360 hours a month per month. In order to get the 4,000 watch hours required for monetization. I think it may happen by June. I doubt it. It's possible. I don't know. It may happen. I don't know. It might be December. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. But I think it also might be a function of getting this number up to about. Let's move that down a little bit. Getting this number up to about. I'm going to put it right here. I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000. That may help too. I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. It's getting late at night, and my voice is getting all gruff and scruffly. I can tell you that I've been getting up early, going to work. I've been busy at the shop, doing a lot of work at the shop. I built 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I finished 5 of the solo shot glass totes today. I have 2 of the tandem shot glass totes. I'm going to build probably 10 more solo shot totes and then 8 more tandem shot totes. So the idea is to get those and take them with me to the HTX Whiskey Weekend and the Texas Whiskey Fest and use them as merch to be able to sell at my table. Or give them away to one person who has signed up for our mailing list. So that's kind of the idea. They give you an incentive to sign up. Anyway, let's go. Let's talk. Old Humble After Dark. Give me your dumb alien stories. And see, that's another thing about the scientific method. You can say, like, I've been abducted by aliens, and then the rest of us can use deductive logic, reasoning, and experimentation, walk our way through logically, step by step. Like, did you really? I mean, you sound like you're full of shit. This is a historically ridiculous claim. No, ridiculous is probably not a fair word. And historically, uh, 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 extraordinary claim. That's it. It's an extraordinary claim. So, like, we can walk through it. Like, okay, what are the odds that aliens have actually visited us? The universe is really hella big. Uh, why would aliens on a ship, like three or four or five of some small ship, why would they be coming to Earth to pick up humans when, like, from their perspective, where they started, the humans didn't exist? They're looking at our planet, we didn't even exist yet. Why would they? And like the whole logic behind the claim falls apart, like really quick. The whole logic behind the claim falls apart. Um, I don't know why I was talking about that, but anyway, yeah. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and if you say you're going to do, you say you've done cold fusion, we need to see, some extraordinary evidence. Let's make it bigger. Yeah, that's much easier to see. All right. Anyway, Mr. Lopez, cheers to everybody. Cheers to Mr. Lopez. I've never thought of humanity. Yeah, I mean, like for most of our existence, we have just been uh, grubby little apes running around the savannah. We have not been. Uh, we've not been for most of our existence. The amount of time that we have focused our energy on discovering things has been a remarkably short amount of time. And in that remarkably short amount of time, we've gone from like for example with flight. Orville Wright lived long enough, the guy who literally invented flight, the guy who invented flight schools, the guy who invented pilot training, the guy who invented heavier than air fixed wing flight with his brother, Orville and Wilbur Wright. We know these guys. The guy who invented flight lived long enough to see man step foot on the moon. That dude lived long enough. Hey Siri, when did Orville Wright die? I think he died in 1971. The answer I found is January 30th, 1948. Okay, so not 1940, not Orville. He didn't see the man land on the. Hey Siri, when did Wilbur Wright die? I may be completely wrong about this. Hey Siri, when did Wilbur Wright die? Come on. Hey Siri, when did Wilbur Wright die? Or did they both die on January 30th? The Wright brothers, Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright, were American aviation. They made the first date of birth, January 30th, awards received. Come on, give me more information. Date of death, January 30th. Stop it, open up. I may be completely wrong about this. They lived to see jets flying, cross country flights. Wright brothers, Orville, 1912. What? Wilbur Wright died in 1912. Orville Wright died in 1948. Oh, I'm completely wrong about that. I thought he lived much longer than that. No, he died early. Hey Siri, when was the first jet flight? 1939 was the first turbojet-powered flight. So Orville Wright lived long enough to see the first turbojet-powered flight. Come here. Hey, turn on the fan.
Love you too.
Thank you. I love you. My lovely wife, everybody. The lovely Mrs. Old Humble Guy.
Bye.
She's beautiful. She's talented. She's lovely. The Mrs. Old Humble Guy. Say hi to everybody.
Hello.
See, she's lovely. Y'all can't see it right now, but she is wearing a fur bikini.
Yeah.
She is cosplaying as the Bear Clan chick from that one movie. She's amazing. I love her. That's why we're gonna wrap up probably around midnight because I got stuff to do. You know what I mean? So anyway, Orville Wright. I make an extraordinary claim. Orville Wright lived long enough to see the first man land on the moon. We can test that hypothesis. Is that true? Is he full of shit? Is that true? Is that wrong? No, that's not true. That's not right. It is definitely wrong. He lived long enough to see the first turbojet. I got my facts mixed up. He lived long enough to see the first turbojet powered flight. He invented flight. A 7-second flight on the shores of what was it, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kitty Hawk. They're from Ohio, by the way. Lived long enough to see the first turbojet powered flights take off. Unbelievable. Within his lifespan, we went from being unable to fly to turbojets. Fucking amazing. The speed of innovation, the speed of knowledge gathering, the speed with which we can develop knowledge using the scientific method, unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. It took us 10,000 years to figure out how to put a stick in a circle and make a wheel. It took us 10,000 years. And in the Americas, they never figured that shit out. The Incas didn't have the wheel and axle. The Iroquois didn't have a wheel and axle. The Mayans didn't have the wheel and axle. They didn't have draft animals. They didn't have anything you could hook a wheel and axle up to, so they never thought to maybe make a wheel and axle. All they had was other people. And other people, they could just take, rocks and stuff and strap it on their back and carry them that way. Never occurred to them. Never occurred to the Incans, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Iroquois, the Cherokee, the Choctaw. Never occurred to them. Not even once. Oh, maybe we should make a cart and connect up our animals because they didn't have any fucking animals. Llama? You can't do that with a llama. That's why they didn't have smallpox. That's why they didn't have smallpox and all the other diseases that came from the old world because they didn't sleep with pigs and horses and goats and shit. And when I say sleep, I mean actually sleep, like sleep, not like fuck them. I'm sure also fuck them. But they didn't do that either because they didn't have goats to fuck. Anyway, knows who was responsible for the scientific method as it is today. Someone have a personal stake in it. Who's responsible for the scientific method today? I'll let that be a trivia question open to the masses. Ooh. Fun. You mean the Earth's not flat? Yes, I mean the Earth's not flat. The Earth is definitely not flat. And my favorite flat Earth claim is with this one flat Earth dude whose experiment. He was like, if you take a laser and shoot it through a hole in a board, and the boards are sufficiently far enough apart, if the Earth is round, if you shoot it through the hole in the one board, it's not going to go through the hole in the next board because you're going around because but the Earth's flat, so you could definitely do that. You could definitely line up the boards and shoot the laser through it, and they did it, and it didn't work. And he's like, "This isn't right." And he's like, "Well, lift it up about 19 feet or whatever it was, 17 feet, whatever it is. And will that work?" And he lifted it up and it shot through the hole. He's like, because that's the exact calculation of the curvature of the Earth, right? And he's like, that's not how it's supposed to. Yeah, hilarious video. Absolutely fucking hilarious video. And another one. This Graham Hackman dingle dong, who's all like ancient civilizations, ancient Egyptians, and if you take the height of the pyramid and you multiply it by 42,300, you get the exact radius of the Earth at the poles. I'm like, well, we can do that. You take out your pen and you get to writing. Turns out that's not true. And you know how we know that? Because math works. Math fucking works. You can multiply 455, which is the height of the pyramid, times 42,300, which is a meaningless number. It doesn't mean anything. It's not attached to, there's no mystical meaning to 42,300, especially considering 42,300 times 455 does not equal the polar radius of the earth. And if you take the perimeter of the base of the pyramid and you multiply by the same number, you don't get the circumference of the earth at the equator. Go figure. The guy's full of shit. And he's full of shit, and we know he's full of shit because we can take his claims, we can test his claims. Like, here it is. The claim is A. The hypothesis is that's not true. How do we test it? Do the math. The result is confirms the hypothesis, because the experiment is, if we do the math, do we get this number? Do we even come close to the number? Is it off by like a couple of feet or a couple of miles or a couple of tenths of a mile? Like, is it off within an acceptable range of error, right? Because it could be an acceptable range of error. The first people, when the Greeks calculated the circumference of the earth, they were off by a few hundred feet. That's an acceptable error when you're talking about measuring, when you're measuring shadows. That's acceptable, a couple hundred feet. And, you account for elevation and all that. Sure. Were they off by a couple hundred feet? No, they're off like several hundred miles. That's not close. Several hundred miles is not close. That's like saying I'm going to Houston and you end up in New Orleans. Several hundred miles is not close. Not even remotely close. And then you do the other one and like, is it even remotely close? No, it's off by millions of feet. Millions. Is it even remotely close? No, not even remotely close. So the hypothesis is it true? Yes or no. It's a binary hypothesis. Is it true? Yes or no. Do the math. No, it's not true. And ergo, he's full of shit. Now, we can debate all day long about why he's full of shit. Is he just a con artist? Is he an idiot? Is he just doing it for money? Is he a fan fiction, a human history fan fiction enthusiast, and he just really, really wants to like create some goofy narrative and write a book about it? Maybe he wants to have like some, Stargate novel that he wants to write, or mermaids or some shit. I don't know. That's possible. We can debate about the motives all day long, but the question of whether or not he's telling the truth, that's clear. He's not. He's not telling the truth. It's obvious because you can just do the math. Like all of his claims, claim after claim after claim after claim after claim after claim after claim, can be straight up debunked. You can look at it and go, oh, that's not true. Here's the math. Here's the evidence. Here's the whatever it is. And also, by the way, I've started watching the stupid Ancient Apocalypse series on Netflix, and oh my god, from jump, it is moronic. Oh, he's like, I am not a scientist. I am a journalist. I'm like, okay, so this isn't science. This is journalism. And he says, my job is to give an alternative point of view. Like that's not journalism either. That's not journalism either. Journalism is not, the requirement of a journalist is not give an alternative point of view. The requirement of a scientist is to report, do facts and evidence and findings and analysis. That's the job of a scientist. The job of a journalist is to say, this is what the findings were of the scientists. The job of some kind of kooky fucking nutball, social whatever ding dong who's trying to sell books is to give an alternative. And then you get people like Joe Rogan who comes on and goes, well, the obvious only fucking solution, the obvious, the most obvious thing is that there was some magic of some blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Jesus Christ. People. These fucking people. They drive me to drink. They drive me to drink. That's what they do. Anyway, where are we at? I'm now 20 minutes behind in chat. Sorry, I'm catching up. Where's my damn car that runs on hydrogen or water? I didn't know the moon was inverted in the southern hemisphere. Oh yeah, bacon, dude. I was on my way to work one day. I'm on my way to work one day. I don't have the radio on. I'm sitting in traffic and I'm just thinking about this. Like, okay, so like the Earth, right? The Earth goes like this, right? We're up here on the top half, the northern half, right? We're up here. Like the moon's over here, right? The moon's over here. We're over here, right? Like we're facing the moon. Down here, they're upside down, right? They're literally orientation wise, we're pointed up looking at the moon. They're pointed down looking at the moon, right? Their orientation is opposite of ours. We're up here, they're down here. Right? And I was thinking about this. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If they're if if the center of the earth is here and the North Pole they're like this and the South Pole they're like this, and we're both looking at the same thing, like they can't see the northern star, they can't see Polaris from down here. But if we're looking at the moon this way down at the moon, and they're looking at the moon up at the moon has to be inverted. Right? Like it has to be. Right? Like I'm sitting in traffic and I'm thinking about this like this is how it has to be. Like the further down you go to the equator, like you go from the North Pole, further down to the equator you go, you literally have to look directly above your head to see the equatorial plane of the planets. It's like literally above you. And then as you start moving south, you're looking the other direction. You're looking the further south you go. So as you move down, the moon begins to rotate, and as you go further south, it flips over. The moon flips over in the southern hemisphere. They see a different moon. And even more to blow your mind, when you're in the southern hemisphere and you're facing the equator, right? Which is to the north, you're looking towards the equator to the north. Up here in the northern hemisphere, we face the equator to the south. So, for my orientation up here in Houston, where my house is, that is south. The equatorial plane goes there. The moon rises or the sun rises over here, and it goes that way and sets over there somewhere. That's my orientation here. 90 degrees south of me, I'm at like 60 degrees north. I'm at 30 degrees north. So 60 degrees south of me would be 30 degrees south, exact opposite side of the equator from where I'm at. That would be where the sun rises, and that would be where it sets. So where I'm at now, my sun rises on my left and sets on my right, but the opposite side of the world, it rises on my right and sets on my left. Everything is upside down and the spiders want to kill you. You know why? That's why I want to fight a kangaroo. They have it fucking coming. The whole southern hemisphere has this shit coming. They mess up geography. They mess up the moon. They mess up the sun. They mess up the stars. Everything is messed up in the southern hemisphere. And the kangaroos are the indigenous to the southern hemisphere, and they're going to take it. I'm going to beat them up because of it. It's their fault. They blew my mind. And I was like, this can't be true. How did I not learn about this in elementary school? And I had to go and look it up. I looked up astronomy.com, fucking Wikipedia, Southern Hemisphere star charts, inversion of the moon in the Southern Hemisphere. And yep, you look it up and it is it's not a full 180 degree flip. It's like, would it be 180? Yeah, it's not a full 180 degree flip. It's like like three quarters of a half, which would be 180 times three quarters. And it's like a 120 degree flip. But it is fucked up. It was fucked up, and it's been 10 years since I made this like revelation in my brain, and it still shakes me to my core when I think about it. Still shakes me to the core. To this day, it is fucked up. Anyway, so you think shit's about to hit the fan. California going bankrupt is just the start. Unemployment is fixing to be rampant. All right. this has also been on my mind this past week. I've wanted to do a store. I wanted to talk about SV. I think it's probably better for a day in the life talk, but I don't know, man. We okay, so I've been talking about this for years, really. Where we have a low inflation environment, jobs are crazy, anti-immigrant sentiment, low birth rate, but people keep hiring and people keep hiring and people keep hiring and people keep hiring. And when the shit started to go egg shaped with inflation, I was a firm believer that this was a supply side disruption, right? Because in the late 70s, early 80s, we switched from a monetary based uh, from monetary based for shorthandedness, monetary based economic model to uh, a currency based economic model, rather, to a supply side based economic model. That's why we started pushing production overseas. We started pushing production to China, pushing production to India, pushing production. All of the cheap commodity crap that we buy, pots and pans and silverware and t-shirts and shoes and pants and hats and all the cheap commodity shit that we buy got shoved overseas. All of the expensive stuff, the high level stuff, the final assembly stuff stayed here. Um, the stuff that takes you can do with more robotics, less manpower, uh, finer work, you know, all that stuff. The brute force stuff was sent overseas. The finer stuff stayed here for the most part. Not always, but for the most part. Uh, with COVID, we had a supply side disruption. Like China got fucked royally. They're still royally fucked. They're still being royally fucked with supply side disruption. That's where we get all our stuff. That's how we survive a low inflation environment by continuously pushing prices down, pushing prices down, pushing prices down, pushing prices down. When the price of a pot doesn't change, if it's $20 for a pot in 1993 and it's $20 for a pot in 2023, that is not normal. That is zero inflation, right? And that's because we can continuously make more and make more and make more and just flood the supply chain. The supply chain that we work with right now is this amazing thing. I've thought about this too. Uh, Look at Chick-fil-A. They do like 4 million birds are required to supply Chick-fil-A in a year. 4 million chickens. And that's just the breast. What do they do with the rest of the chicken? Oh, it goes to Wingstop or whatever. Who cares? 4 million chickens. Insane numbers. To build a supply chain to make that many chickens every week to supply Chick-fil-A, Burger King, McDonald's. You know how many cows they got to kill every single day to supply McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King and Five Guys and all of the places that have meat? I'm talking about just McDonald's. 1 billion burgers sold? 1 billion times a quarter pound of meat? And it's only gotten more advanced, more faster as it goes on. So all of our economics are supply side, right? And when you have a disruption of the supply, uh, like you have a disruption of the supply, but not a disruption of the money buying the supply, like the price just goes up through the roof. Ergo, inflation, 8% inflation for But low inflation environment, low interest rate environment also creates a debt problem. Mortgages, credit cards, student loans, like an inflationary environment, that stuff becomes a smaller and smaller and smaller portion of your income. You borrow money in 2010 dollars, you pay it back in 2020 dollars. The 2020, the inflation makes your debt go small. Unfortunately, inflation also makes your fixed income payments go small too. So, you know, there was a reason why we went to a low inflation environment and a low interest environment is because we were expecting baby boomers to just demolish the fixed income payments going forward. It didn't happen. We managed it. It happened a little bit, but it didn't happen entirely. But now we're in this environment where, like, the boomers are still an issue as they continue to retire, and Social Security becomes a larger and larger and larger payout. But we're also in this situation where the supply side is fucked, and China is having population problems, and China's on the verge of having a serious population problem where they go from like 1.5 billion people to under 1 billion, and you got to replace all those people, probably with Indians, people from India, Indian people. I don't know. I don't Mexico, India, Indonesia. I mean, the supply chain's going to have to accommodate this over the course of a couple of years. But unfortunately, in order to combat inflation, we also raise interest rates. When we raise interest rates, that makes that affects the bond market. And if you're an investor who's invested heavily in low interest rate bonds, well, high interest rates for the market, because if government securities are paying 0 to 0.5% and you're invested in 1.5 to 2% bonds, and then the government raises the rates up to 2, 3, 4%, well, now your 1.5% bonds, instead of being valuable and sold at a premium, are being sold at a discount, and you are fucked. All of your assets just get discounted by 30%, 40%, 60%. You're screwed. You're totally screwed. And that in a nutshell is what happened to SVB. And it was SVB and another bank, Signature Bank, I think. But it seems, I mean, the Fed jumped in, the Fed contained it. It seems we're a week into this thing. It seems that it's contained. The markets were roiled today. They're doing what markets do. It's this is a long-term systemic problem. It's it's not it's not a thing that can be like pointed at and said, "Oh, it's because of their whatever." It's because of it. This bank is a casualty of bad policy decisions on the bank's part and inevitable policy decisions on the Fed's part. Eh, these two things came together and they got fucked. I don't think it's a sign of a larger systemic problem in our banking system. I don't think it's a larger systemic problem in our financial sector. I don't think it's a big deal because we're still talking about 3.5% unemployment. We're still talking about 300,000 new jobs added in when was it, February? We're still talking about hiring. Wages are going up faster and faster and faster. Um, even if they raise the rates another 1% it leads to 2 million people being unemployed, they're that's like a 4-month disruption. They're hiring that many people as fast as they can. They're doing it. I don't see it being a big deal in the long run because we're still um but crises don't happen because of one thing. Crises happen because of two, three, four things that come together in an inopportune time. Um so it's certainly something to keep an eye on, but I don't think it's anything to panic about. I don't think it's I don't think it's time to pull the cord and worry that shit's about to hit the fan because I don't think shit's about to hit the fan. I think it is a fairly localized thing. All the depositors are made whole. Uh, all the depositors have been made whole, so it's not the shareholders are not whole, but they shouldn't be. The depositors are being made whole, so I think we're okay. I'm I'm cautiously optimistic when it comes to that. I'm generally optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic when it comes to this. Uh, saying that Randy Quaid was not abducted by. I am saying Randy Quaid was not abducted by aliens. I think that is a very safe thing to say. Yes. Randy Quaid was not abducted by aliens. 9 times 27 is 81. Yeah. Ting Ting's in the house. Hi, Ting Ting. Welcome to the party. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time. Love you so much. Using that tracking spying device called, yes, I use Siri. Yeah, that's IRI. But yes, I use Siri. Well, you know, my phone's way over there. I didn't want to like pick it up and touch it with my fingers. The Indians put 3 sticks together and made horses and dogs drag their yes, they made horses and dogs drag their stuff around, but they didn't have the wheel. They didn't have a wheel. They were wheelie inept. Wheel primitive. Anyway, sorry. I won't do that again. Let's carry on. What was approximation for when was an approximation of the Earth's radius made? I believe that would be about the same time that Eratosthenes determined the circumference of the Earth when he did his little experiment with the shadows. Because you can do, if you know the circumference, you can determine the radius. I think even back then they understood the concept of pi. Even as far back as Eratosthenes when he was calculating the circumference. I think, but it would have required knowing the circumference. It would have required an understanding of pi. Hey Siri, when was pi invented? That was also a discussion that we had one time. A brief history of pi, not that pi. God damn it. Yesterday was Pi Day, for crying out loud. I don't want to fucking know about cobblers and shit. Anyway, why do flat earthers? I don't care about flat earthers. I've long gotten past the point of trying to discuss and determine and understand. I don't care. I don't care. It's not. I mean, you know this, Vanessa. You've seen this show enough. You've seen me do my shtick enough. There are certain topics that I don't consider to be debatable topics, so I don't debate them. I mean, I'm more than willing to discuss how we know the Earth is round, how we know the size of the Earth, how we know the shape of the Earth, how we know pi. Pi is a universal constant. We know this shit. I am totally down to get into this, 100%. But I'm not gonna argue whether or not the Earth is round. That's not a debatable topic. It's like why are we debating this? It's not debatable. Like it is. That's it. Why don't we just debate whether or not green? That you can't debate green. Green is. I mean, what the fuck? I don't care. Even if you're colorblind, green still exists. It empirically exists on the spectrum of colors, whether you can see it or not. It doesn't care about your feelings. The polar circumference, the equatorial circumference. Yeah. They are slightly different, but they're not drastically different. The polar circumference of the equatorial, but Graham Chapman was saying specifically that 42,000 times the base is the equatorial circumference of the Earth, and it is not. It is not. It is not. So there. Dun, 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 dun. How do you determine your range of error on some measurement? Well, yeah, that actually is extremely important, and it depends on your range of error depends on your tolerance of variance. Like for example, when they were developing the first steam engines, nobody invented the steam engine. Now, that would be a great topic too. Like the steam engine was developed over the course of several decades and even hundreds of years. The steam engines that we have now barely resemble the first steam engines. I'm gonna go get another piece of ice. put a pin in the steam engines. I'll be right back. I'm going to go grab another quick piece of ice. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. All right. Consummate professional here. Always professional YouTubing like a fucking boss. Um, but yeah, I mean, Watt, I believe, yeah, Watt was the first person to put a operational steam engine to use, but he was the first one to patent it. But he developed that steam and he developed that patent based on other people's knowledge of how steam worked. Like the Egyptians knew that you could put steam in a vessel and hold the vessel together and then condense the steam, and that vessel you wouldn't be able to pull it apart because as the steam condensed, it created a vacuum and held the two halves of the vessel together. The Egyptians knew this. They used steam to open doors, and do priestly things. They used steam as a tool. The Egyptians did, but they didn't understand it. Pre-scientific method. They didn't understand how it worked. The Egyptians knew it. The French knew it before Watt patented it. The Hungarians knew it. The Germans knew it. They knew about it. They knew the properties of it, but they didn't have. They hadn't put it through the rigorous scientific process. And then the really cool thing that Watt figured out was he was a watchmaker originally. You could take valves and allow steam to go out from one piston tube to another piston tube, and when it escaped over here and condensed here, it would create a vacuum and pull the piston down and do double the work. That was the big innovation that turned the steam pistons into actually they were able to do twice the amount of work, become more efficient, and then they could use the steam engine to pump water out of the shafts that they were mining in, so that they could get more coal, so that they could feed the steam engine, so they could pump more water out of the shaft, so they get more coal, so they could feed the steam engine to pump more water out of the shaft to get more coal, etc., etc. The first steam engines were designed to pump water out of coal mines. That's why they were invented. That's exactly why Watt patented the first steam engine to pump water out of mines. And eventually, they became more efficient using condensing vessels and pistons and valves and all this other stuff. But it was one little innovation, one little addition, one little modification after another, after another, after another, to having the steam chamber, to having the fire tubes, the fire chamber, all the stuff that the eventual innovations were, running the heated air through the water to turn it into steam, running the water through the fire, they did all kinds of different configurations to eventually having steam run uh, uh, to running ships and steam running giant turbine engines that are fueled not by coal but by nuclear power. I mean, all of our uh, power generation today is literally steam engines. Whether it's water being heated up by oil or gas or coal or nuclear fusion, it's all Heat going to water, turning it to steam, to turn a turbine, to give you electricity. All of it sparked by Thomas Watt's original invention of a steam engine, which wasn't even really invention. The development of a steam engine would probably be a better description of it, because he didn't invent it. He just developed a couple of valves that turned it into a fairly efficient thing to do. And it's one little innovation after another, after another, after another. And the thing that sparked the Industrial Revolution wasn't so much the steam engine, but the idea that you could own an idea, a patent. The patent had more of a role in creating the Industrial Revolution than even the steam engine, because they didn't have patent law in France. They didn't have patent law in Denmark. They didn't have patent law in Sweden. They didn't have patent law in Germany. They didn't have it in Spain. They didn't have it anywhere. They had a whole engineering academy in Paris, but they didn't have patent law. They worked on pistons. They worked on pneumatics. They worked on hydraulics. They worked on all of the stuff at the engineering academy in Paris, but they didn't have patents. So all these ideas that these people had, they couldn't commercialize them. In England, they had patents. They had patents. They had monopolies. They had copyright. They had all that stuff codified in law. And that's where the steam engine started. England. Not France, not Germany, not Hungary, not Switzerland, not Sweden, not Denmark. Sweden has the oldest continuous corporation in the world, a mining corporation. But they didn't come up with a steam engine. I think a steam engine would have been really useful to mine ores out of the mountain in Sweden. Yeah, probably. They didn't come up with it. They didn't have patents. Fascinating story. Absolutely fascinating story. One of my favorite books. I've got it around here somewhere. One of my favorites, it's probably up there. It's called The Most Powerful. In fact, in here. This drawer? No. In this drawer? No. In this drawer. It's somewhere around here. I have it somewhere around here. Somewhere. The Most Powerful Idea. And it's about the development of the steam engine. And it's all about how patents and the steam engine and licensing out the idea of the steam engine made. Oh, it's a fucking fascinating book. Anyway. Where are we? That whole thing was to determine the tolerances, because when you have pistons, you have a piston and the tube that the piston goes through. You have to have a tight tolerance. You can't have the piston sitting there rattling around in the tube. And if you have steam, a steam pushing the piston up and down and up and down, you have to have a very tight tolerance. And there was a confluence of technology where it became possible. But the really cool thing about the steam engine is that as the machines were developed to mass produce block and tackle for British naval vessels, right? So you have a big giant wheel in a river, and it's turning the wheel, and the wheel has a shaft, and the shaft is connected to a bunch of other stuff, and a bunch of other stuff it's a saw, or it's a hammer, or it's a drill, or whatever it is, right? So you have your wooden shaft and all your wooden stuff, and it's not, it's all rattly and jiggly and stuff, and it's not particularly good tolerances. Very wide variances when it comes to hammering stuff and cutting stuff, and a board's length will be 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch, a whole half-inch, quarter-inch tolerance there. As the steam engines were developed to run these factories, and as the steam engines were developed to run the machines in the factories, they were able to cut with finer and finer and finer tolerances. They were able to cut metal. They were able to cut drill bore holes into metal that had a more consistent diameter, a more consistent circumference on the width of the borehole, more consistent depth, more smoother, consistent pistons. as the machines were developed, they were able to develop better machines with finer tolerances. And as it continued, they wouldn't have been able to make the stuff they make today in the 1600s, because in the 1600s, they didn't have, like, everything had to, if it had a really tight tolerance, it had to be made by hand. Watches and stuff like that had to be made by hand. Now we have machines that can make watches, because we have machines that made machines that made machines that made machines that can make watches. But back then they didn't have that. Everything had to be made by hand. The first steam engines were made by hand. 3 generations later, steam engines were being used to make steam engines. The mechanization was flourishing and making the industry so much more efficient and so much more effective the more and more and more it went along. They were able to get better ores. They were able to better refine it. They were able to do so much more with the machine. And the Industrial Revolution wasn't just using machines to make more food and using machines to make life easier. It was literally using machines to make more machines and better machines and improve the technology at a faster and faster and faster and faster rate. Which is why when you have computers designing computers, when you, a person, use a computer to design a computer, you can make a better computer than if it's just you designing a computer. You can use that technology and leverage it and make it better and better and better and better and better. Fascinating. The whole story of the development of the steam engine is just absolutely fascinating. We should do a whole show on that. The cool thing about maybe a floater in space, I just wonder when I would get flushed for being a floater. If we jump off Earth fast enough, will we travel, say, 13 billion light years across Earth? The whole universe. I take a dump downwards, and the opposite side person takes a dump. That was like the whole plot of. Total Recall, when they had the tube that went through the Earth. Yeah, that was like a whole toilet system, wasn't it? I may have only watched that movie once. Interplanetary plumbing. Toilet flush considering clockwise in the southern hemisphere. That is, I don't. Yeah, I'm told that's true. I don't know. I've never flushed a toilet in southern hemisphere, but I really do. I don't know. I've seen, with the Coriolis effect. I understand that makes sense. And if you there's a video of a dude who like takes the bucket and he like he brings it like 20 feet from one side of courtyard to the other side of courtyard, literally across the equator. And it does it. Like it goes one way and then it goes to the other side, it goes the other way. And that shit blows my mind. I see the image of the moon. Don't tell me the moon doesn't exist. Yes, your perspective of the moon has literally changed 180 degrees. The moon is upside down, is what I'm saying. The moon is upside down in the southern hemisphere, and it is messed up. If I am dizzy, how does it feel? Yes, because of the spiders, kangaroos, and the other animals will kill you. The Elsie land was created. Yep, that's exactly right. Think about this type of thing. The faster you move, the slower. Oh, dude, that is also fucked up. Because if you travel at the speed, I was talking to Tanya about this on our 72-hour live stream. That if you leave Earth and you travel at light speed, 400 light years away, you would arrive at that planet 400 years from now. But to you, it would have been instantaneous. When you went into light speed and came out of light speed, you would have left Earth. It would have been just like that. Into light speed, out of light speed. In, out. Done. Instantaneous. You would have moved from point A to point B instantaneous. 400 years would have passed. You would be arriving at that planet 400 years later. Right? And this is where things get messed up. you can now affect events before the people on Earth perceive them. Is that right? No. Yes, that's right. You're arriving at that planet before. No, wait, that's not right. You begin to affect events 400 years from now. They're going to see you arrive. Like, so you leave here, 400 years later you arrive. Earth, they see you arrive 400 years from now. But they won't see you arrive for another 400 years after that. Right? If you travel slightly faster than the speed of light, if you figure out a way, tesseract, wormhole, whatever, so you turn that 400 years of travel time into 300 years of travel time. There's 100 years of events where the light has already left. So let's say it's the year 300 Olympics, right? That leaves. There's another Olympics and another Olympics and another Olympics. There's 100 more years of Olympics that leave that planet and come to our eyes here on Earth. But you arrived right after the 300 Olympics, right? So you've got 100 years to fuck shit up. And then 100 years of events happen. And then on Earth, we suddenly see something like the timeline just like breaks and starts an entirely new timeline. That's like messed up. Like think that through. If you were able to wormhole your way so that a 400-year trip was only 300 years. Meanwhile, events are happening, 400 years worth of events, 400 years worth of events have left that planet and they're on their way. So we're seeing what, if you would have gone the normal time, 400 years, we're seeing 300 years worth of activity, and then the timeline just breaks and it's a whole nother set of events. Blows my mind. The whole trip would have been instantaneous to us, though. We'd have left and arrived at the same time. Messed up. Absolutely messed up. Giant earthworms in Australia. Yeah, Kevin Bacon fought those guys. 10:58. Shit, I am 30 minutes behind on chat. Speed time fast enough, you create time past. You go in the future. Theoretically, if the universe is a donut, a circle, if the universe is from as we understand, it's a flat plane. But if the universe curves, theoretically, the farther out we look, the Earth, if we look far enough out, we could see the beginning of. We could see our younger selves from behind, theoretically. But I don't think that's seriously theoretical physics there. I don't think that's how that works in real life. You're really close to the speed of light. Your time goes extremely slow compared. That is 100% true. Giant earthworms are real buggers. Destroy your house with just one. Yeah, photons that run at the speed of light, they do not experience the transit of time. From as I understand time travel and time dilation. Like that's how you can. That's why if you're traveling at the speed of light and you turn on a flashlight, you can still see the light out in front of you. You won't have the light like shining behind you. Light still goes at the speed of light in front of you as you're going at the speed of light. It's just time slows down and it eventually stops. Yeah, that's messed up. Because if you throw a ball out the front of a train at 100 miles an hour, you throw the ball at 20 miles an hour, the train's going 100 miles an hour, the ball goes at 120 miles an hour until wind resistance stops it and pushes it back. But if you're going at the speed of light and you throw a ball in front of you, the ball has to go at the speed of light plus 20 miles an hour. If you throw the ball at 20 miles an hour, just toss. I'm not under any illusions that any of you people are professional pitchers. How many cows are slaughtered each year in the USA? How many chickens? There's got to be hundreds of millions of chickens slaughtered every year in the United States. And hey Siri, how many cows are slaughtered in the United States each year? Approximately 300 million cows are slaughtered every year in the United States. 300 million. That's one cow per American citizen every single year in the United States. That's insane. And most of that meat doesn't get exported. Most of that meat stays domestic because you can't really export meat, right? There's certain things that don't get exported, like milk doesn't get exported. Coca-Cola gets exported. That's international. But meat, milk, fruits and vegetables can be exported. They get shipped all over the Western Hemisphere. But for the most part, meat stays local. So that's 300 million cows being slaughtered and sold in the United States, probably in the NAFTA region, Mexico, USA, and Canada. Protons its own world, I'm pretty sure it would say everything is so slow. Yep. Offhand guess, photons are more or less exempt in that regard. Photons are pretty messed up. They're both, photons are both waves and particles, depending on how you measure them. God, I love science content. Science content nights are my favorites. Now think what happens as the photon approaches a black hole, across the event horizon, and then falling towards the center singularity. No, I don't want to think about that. But yeah, I mean, as it does it, time doesn't change for the photon. It continues to be, it continues to experience no time passage, no time dilation. But it is fun to think when you look at your own shadow laying there on the ground, that is a photon that has spent hundreds of thousands of years escaping the sun, left the sun, spent 8 minutes traveling from the sun to Earth, traveled all the way through the Earth's atmosphere, avoiding clouds, avoiding particles, avoiding dust, avoiding any other solid particle just to hit you in the fucking face and not actually end up on the ground. That shadow that you're casting on the ground is evidence that you killed a proton or a photon. You killed a photon. Congratulations, your shadow is evidence of that. And the sun and reaches the surface and leaves the surface, and the sun take a photon from the surface here a wee bit less than 8 minutes. Yeah, it's 8 minutes to go from the sun to Earth, but it takes thousands of years to go from the center of the sun to the surface of the sun. Thousands of years, which I find to be just fascinating. Because it doesn't apparently go from the center of the sun to the out. It goes like, but to the photon, no time passes because it's moving at the speed of light. Become part of the spaghetti effect, spaghettification. NIW, since the photon was created, feels time at a standstill. Right. It'll feel what about its own? The photon doesn't experience time. It doesn't have weight. A photon has no mass, so there's no time passing. Photons are nothing. I've thought about this too. Like, would we be able to, if we could shrink ourselves, would we be able to more efficiently travel the universe? Because I watched that movie, Downsizing. The whole concept of the movie Downsizing is that if we were smaller, we would use less resources, and we could literally save the world. Because we'd be smaller, we'd use less resources, we'd be less resource intensive. Humanity could continue to flourish and grow and theoretically grow, do all the things that humanity does, but we wouldn't be so, we could, multiply tremendously without being impactful to the environment. But like the world is the world is already really big on a human scale, right? Like think about your dog. Depending on what kind of dog you have. My mom has a little baby rat dog, like the size of a Chihuahua, just a little teeny tiny like pocket dog. We have a German Shepherd mix. You've seen Wally, the distillery dog. He's a small German Shepherd. He's not a small dog. He's not a big dog. He's a mid-sized dog. But then you have those Great Danes that are like this big. They're huge dogs, like horses. But you have a Chihuahua next to a horse. Like the Chihuahua can't cover the same amount of ground. Like an ant can't cover the same amount of territory as a horse or a bird, even. Birds can cover a tremendous amount of territory because they fly. But an ant can't cover the same amount of territory as a lion. A Great Dane can cover far more territory than a Chihuahua. The smaller you are, the longer the scale becomes insurmountable, right? I mean, we think as humans that walking miles and miles and miles, marathon miles, hundreds of miles, thousands of miles a day, like thousands of miles a day is outside the realm of reasonable for a human being. But 20 miles a day, that's not outside the realm of reasonable for a human being. 15 miles a day, that is certainly reasonable for a human being. But 20 miles a day, 25 miles a day, 30 miles a day, if all you're doing is walking, you stop, you eat, you get up and walk, that is not outside the realm of reasonable. If you're a band of humans migrating from India, from Indo-Africa, the Middle East area, the northeast part of Africa, if you're walking 30 miles a day, it's not at all remotely inconceivable to make it from Africa to the edge of Asia and down into South America over the course of 500 years, 5,000 years, 25,000 years. Are you kidding me? I could cross Texas in 2 weeks. It doesn't take 5,000 years to go from Egypt to Machu Picchu. It certainly doesn't take that. It would take like 6 months, 8 months of we're moving, we're leaving, we're moving, we're following the buffalo, we're following the whatever. And if you do this over the course of each generation, you're like, all right, we got to get out of here. It's getting busy. We got to go. I'm going to take my bitches and we're going to head out. We're going to go about 30 miles that way. We'll see you guys at the Harvest Festival. Peace out. And you go down the road. That's not unreasonable at all to think, over the course of 10 generations, 20 generations to make it all the way across North America? That's not hard to imagine, even remotely. Even remotely. If every 3 years you have another tribe leaving and heading 30 miles out the way, because you go 30 miles down the way, there's another tribe. You got to go another 30 miles after that, and then another 30 miles after that. Next thing you know, you're 300-400 miles down the road. That's perfectly reasonable. So I think about that periodically too. Like, what would happen if we downsized ourselves? Because like the ships that we required would be smaller, less life support, less energy intensive, less everything intensive, right? So if we were 12 inches tall instead of 3, what are we? 2 meters instead of 6 feet or 12 inches. What would that look like? Like going to Mars, going to Venus? Well, I don't think we can do Venus, but going to Mars, going to another star for only 12 inches tall? Would we live longer if we were smaller? Because, we're less resource intensive. Our bodies wouldn't have to work so hard. Maybe they work harder because they're smaller. Would a trip to Alpha Centauri be only like 3 generations instead of 50? I wonder. And if we were able to shrink ourselves down to photon size, like we could literally go anywhere in the universe and not even experience the passage of time, right? I don't know. That'd be weird. That would be weird. That would be an interesting thought experiment to have with people who are much smarter than me. Like, could we explore the universe if we were smaller? And what if aliens have already done that? What if we've already had aliens visit the Earth, but they've been so tiny we didn't even know it? What if an alien fleet could fit inside my shot glass? A whole alien fleet of like 1,000 ships was inside my shot glass. But they traveled the whole universe. What if that happened? What if there was 100 ships inside a shot glass? If they were that small, we wouldn't even know it. We wouldn't even know. They would have come to Earth and been eaten by a bird. Gone. Whole elite squadron of aliens. Gone. Eaten by a bird. By accident. It was just flying and it just like they ran into its mouth. How fucked up would that be? Anyway. Anyway, where are we? 11:07. Shit. How many banks around the world are breaking because that one? Well, Credit Suisse is having an issue right now. They're getting bailed out, $30 billion bailout from the Swiss national government. But I don't think that's I don't think it's a systemic thing. I think it's, I mean, time's going to have to tell whether or not it's isolated, but, we'll see. We'll see. Who didn't have a wheel? All of the American tribes, all of the American empires, all of the American New World peoples, they did not have the wheel. How the Earth moves, space with the Earth and the Sun. Are you talking about the corkscrew model? Yeah. Can't wait to see Humble these comments. I won't ban you, Vanessa. You're good people. I like you. You're a mathematician. I like mathematicians. So far as fun, I think there was no time or time just stands. I think if you were a photon, you would see the universe around you. I don't have any fucking idea. Like, the universe around you would not move until you stopped, until you hit something. And that's it. You'd run into something, and then they'd be like, oh, look, that's the world. And you'd be dead. That's how it would be. I think. I would think the Brazen Bull was the first thing. I think you might be right. You might be right, where they put the bull over the fire. Are you talking about the torture device Brazen Bull, or are you talking about the Brazen Bull where they put over the fire and then it made the sound and the noise and the screeching? Block and tackle. No, I don't think the Egyptians understood block and tackle, but they did understand levers. I think they understood levers, but I don't think they had block and tackle. That's my understanding. They knew leverage, but they didn't. I don't think the Egyptians had the technology of the wheel. That came. The Egyptians who built the pyramids had the early Egyptians. I don't think they had knowledge of the wheel. That came after the pyramids, I think. Which is one of the reasons why everybody's always sucking their own dick about the pyramids being built. They're like, oh my God, how do they do this? They had to have had some advanced technology of magic and levitation. No, they didn't. They had a whole bunch of fucking people. They had a bunch of people and sand and ropes, and they might have had rollers, but they didn't have. If you have a lot of time and a lot of people, you can do a lot of things. Do a lot of things if you have a lot of time and a lot of people. It does not take. Brute force is a tremendous advantage when you're trying to do things. If you were a photon, you were standing still, the universe would be moving around you. That's a possible way of looking at it. But that's relativity. Like, that's how it is when we're in a rocket flying through space. Like, we're sitting still and the universe is moving around us. The notion of motion, the notion of universal movement, the notion of motion, the notion of universal movement is all based on perspective and relativity. Yeah. Hydraulic goes for a great many millennium. Drake's screw comes to mind. Yep, Drake's screw is a really cool thing. That was used in the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, if I recall. See, I know a little bit about a lot of things. I have an abundance of curiosity. I just don't have enough. I don't have the funding of Joe Rogan, and I have a little bit more skepticism than Joe Rogan. And that said, I still like the guy, even if he is a little bit full of shit. Archimedes screw, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Drake screw, Archimedes screw. I think they're pretty much the same thing. The photon created 13 billion years ago and appeared on Earth at James Webb, as if James Webb just appeared in front of you. Yeah, I mean, think about that. You're a photon that was created at the birth of the universe, and you're just like flying through the universe, and you're like, wow, everything looks poof. You run into the fucking mirror of James Webb. That would piss me off. Yeah, Archimedes and his screws and all that stuff. Yep. Babylonians used water as well as flowing. Fun fact about the Babylonians, they used base 60 for counting. Yeah, they used base 60, which is why we have 60 minutes and an hour and 360 degrees in a circle and all that other shit. Babylonians were bastards. They fucked up all of our counting. Humankind, then we do. When do we see the wheel first used? Hey Siri, when was the wheel first used?
Okay, I found this on the web for when was the wheel first used. Check it out.
Why is it y'all? No. The invention of the wheel. The invention of the wheel. 10,000 years ago is when we see the wheel first used, right? Is that what it's trying to tell me? Invention of the wheel. The wheel was invented in the 4th millennium BC. So that would be 4th millennium, 4,000 years, 6,000 years ago total. It was only in 2000 BC that the discs began to be hollowed out to make a lighter wheel, but it's not the wheel necessarily. It's the wheel and axle. The wheel and axle is a big deal because just having a wheel, look, just having a wheel underneath a thing, that's one thing. But having an axle where it can sit and the wheel can spin independently of the axle, right? So you have the axle going through the cylinder, through the disc. There. You have the axle going through the disc and it being anchored, right? And then you can put weight on the axle and then the disc spins independently of the axle itself. That is a huge innovation because you're talking about being able to bore a hole into the wheel, the circle you've built. You've cut out a circle, then you bored a hole into the circle and anchored that axle that goes through the hole, and then anchored the axle to a platform that's bearing the weight so that the wheel spins independently of that weight. That's a huge innovation because then you're not constantly replacing the rollers. That's the difference between a roller, a wheel, and an axle. And if you have the pulley, or if you have a wheel on an axle that's spinning, then you can throw a rope over that wheel, and now you have a pulley. So the wheel and axle, the wheel by itself is a big invention. It's a big deal, but it's the wheel and axle that's the complex tool that matters. You know, it's one thing to put a log underneath a brick and roll the brick across the logs. That's one thing. That's a simple a simple innovation, a simple tool, a simple way you can do that. But when you separate that roller into its component parts, when you cut the ends off the roller and you bore a hole through the end of the roller, you cut the end off the roller and you make a circle, you make the disc, and then you bore a hole through the disc, and then you take a stick and jam it in that hole and anchor it. Now you've got something that you can really work with, because now you've got a board on which you can place, you can put two boards, right? You can put two axles, and you can put weight on both of them. You can distribute that weight not just on the roller underneath that can be crushed, but you can distribute it across 6 or 7 or 8 wheels, and those wheels can stay stationary underneath the load, and then you can drag the whole thing. And now you don't need an extra crew of people to bring the rollers to the front and the rollers to the front and the rollers to the front. It reduces your workload tremendously, and it reduces the friction, because those rollers aren't rolling along the whole board, the whole weight. They're just sitting there. And now your point of contact with the ground is that 1 inch right there where the wheel meets, where the wheel meets the soil. That's your point of contact right there, as opposed to the whole length being your friction zone. That makes a huge difference when it comes to workload and what you're doing. Hey Siri, wheel and axle invention.
Okay, I found this on the web for wheel.
All right, so the wheel and axle, according to Wondertropolis, was the wheel and axle invention was wheel and axle is often associated with early humans or cavemen. It was invented relatively recently. It was such a complex and challenging invention that it came much later in our time here on Earth, during a period of human history called the Bronze Age. The wheel and axle was invented in the Bronze Age, which I believe was 1100 BC, give or take. That was the Bronze Age collapse. Hey Siri, when was the Bronze Age? 3300 to 1200 BC. So we're talking 5,000 years ago? 4,700 years ago? This is 2023. Yeah. So 4,700 years ago? I mean, that's pretty. That's how complex the notion of putting an axle on the wheel is. Having the wheel rotate around the axle and having the axle be stationary for the wheel to rotate around it. Because, yeah, I mean, if you have a stone wheel, you got to bore a hole inside that stone wheel. It's much more complicated than we give it credit for. Relatively matters for us on Earth and the satellites as we sense. Yeah, because they have to adjust the time on the satellites for GPS. That's true. That's a thing that most people don't know, that the GPS satellites have to be adjusted for time. Otherwise, their timing has to be adjusted. Otherwise, their calculations of the location of the signals can be off by as much as 10 or 15 miles, which is pretty fucked up. Malcolm, that's the day that made me the ability to create stools once again after 20 years. Okay. Creating your own shop for making hammer to lathe and mill. There's a dude who does a series, it's how to make everything, or how to build everything. And he is literally going from Stone Age to microchips of how to build literally everything. Yeah, he is a fascinating watch. Let me see if I can find his channel. I'll drop it. I'll have someone drop it in chat. How to make everything. Is that the channel? That is literally the name of the channel, How to Make Everything. Let me type it down here on my computer screen. How to Make Everything. I would love to have that guy on the show just to talk to him about what he does. He had a fire at his shop and he had to rebuild his shop. So he had a hiatus for a while, but he's back. He's doing stuff and it's fucking awesome. Causing more condition, but now they understand its cellular level. Fascinating. Lathe, milling machine, wood, lathe, forge, furnace, kiln. Lathe. That's the word that I was looking for when I was talking about block and tackles. Yeah, that's it. Took images of the oldest galaxy in our visible universe. Ever wonder what those galaxies actually look like today? Yeah. I wonder if they even exist today. Absolutely. I mean, could you imagine sending an expedition to a star 100 light years away and getting there and finding out they went supernova 25 years ago? It's fucked up. Because we're seeing it 100 years ago because 100 light years. So we're seeing it 100 years ago. So we send an expedition to it that would take 100 years to get there, assuming it traveled at light speed. It would be another 100 years to get there. So we're seeing, when we get there, it will be 200 years in the future from when we saw it. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, it could have been gone, it could have only had 150 years left to live when we saw it. And we send people there and it's been dead for 50 years. Fucked up. It's all fucked up. David, I don't know who that guy is. David Alcubierre? I'll have to look that dude up. I have no idea. I am skeptical of warp drives of any sort. David, my pen, David Alcubierre warp drive. I'm gonna look it up. I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with that. Have to wait a few 100 million years. Yes, you will. Type of engine may be made into the future. Not in my lifetime. We import meat from New Zealand and Australia. Do we? Do we import meat from New Zealand and Australia? I mean, I'm sure we import some. Allegedly, we import Wagyu beef from Japan, but I don't think we actually import beef from Japan. On GID contract was from Australia in the 80s, but my inspection turned up kangaroo meat in the shipments. Holy shit, no! Mate, that's wrong. Ugh, gross. Fucking Australians sending us kangaroo meat. Messed up humans, they were treated as a warp drive. Photons or something. They just not matter. They just don't matter. Photons don't matter. Issue was the reason the deflector. Just in Star Trek, you'd end up picking up so much debris and particles, you end up shotgunning whoever you. Yeah. I'm not a big Star Trek. I don't know. I'm not the Star Trek guy to talk to. Sorry. Although it would be neat to talk about the different types of faster than light or high speed travel through the universe from the different universes. Like Star Wars does hyperdrive. Star Trek does warp speed. Battlestar Galactica does their thing. Yeah, I mean they all experience. They all have different methodologies for traveling across the galaxy, and different ramifications as well. Chain of command all the way back to the heads of the DPSC and Pentagon. That and something about possibly. See, this is so fucking great. I love having these shows because y'all can have your conversations too. The happy hours are great. I love happy hours. It's like a whole ecosystem where y'all can have a conversation about kangaroo meat and Defense Department stuff, and we can be talking about black holes. And we started talking about the scientific method. My topic was scientific method. We're talking about photons. But see, even the way photons interact with the universe, that's something that can be hypothesized, experimented, validated, and tested. We can sit here and philosophize about it. We can think about it and theorize about it and again and have all the fucking philosophy in the world. But actual scientists, they're like, oh yeah, we can tell you what that's like. And there comes this point when you get on right on the edge of theoretical physics and astrophysics and stuff like that, when you get right on the edge of between what's known and unknown, where philosophy and science don't differ significantly. When you talk about string theory, you can't ever test string theory. When you talk about the edge of the universe, what's on the other side of the universe? What's on the other side of the universal horizon? What does a photon experience? What happens when you get past the event horizon of a black hole? What happens when universes collide? What happens when galaxies collide? What happens when stars go when stars go supernova? We've observed it, but for the most part, we have to theorize about what happens because we don't really know for sure. Like we know what happens when a star goes supernova. We know the mechanics behind it. But when you talk about like what's it look like? What's it experience? How do you feel it? How do you see it? What's it sound like? What's it taste like? What's it feel like? That's all philosophy. That is all philosophy. What we know what happens when a star starts to go supernova and we see it start to shed its shells of energy and mass, and we see it. We see these woof, woof, woof. We see these halos of energy and gas being expelled out of a star. We see it. We know what's happening. We know what happens next. That gas is where future stars are going to be formed, and future planetary nebula, and all that other stuff. We know what's going to happen. But the sensory perception of it beyond the observation, that's where you get into philosophy. Like we know what's going to happen to our star. Our sun is going to go red giant. It's going to expel a bunch of energy, expel a bunch of heat. We know what's going to happen. We know that mankind is probably going to be long gone by the time it happens, 4 million years from now, 4 billion years from now. But will the Earth survive? What happens after that? Like that goes into the realm of philosophy, because it's not science that can be touched and experimented with and verified and validated. It becomes a world of philosophy. What's on the edge of the universe? What was there before the universe? What's on the other side of our observable horizon? What if we're in the center of a black hole? What if the Big Bang was a black hole? Like that's philosophy. That's where science and philosophy come back and touch each other again. And before we had this rigorous process, this uh, discipline of investigation and hypothesis and experimentation and findings and review and analysis and repeating. Before we had this process of the scientific method, we had philosophy. And when you get to the very far tattered edge of what science can tell us, then you have to fall back to philosophy. What if it's string theory? What if we're a simulation? What if we're a figment of someone's imagination? And you have to go back to Descartes. I think, therefore I am. The world of science was born from philosophy, but when you get to the edge of what science can tell you, you have to fall back to philosophy. And that philosophy is colored both by personal experience and personal theology. Um, and Neil deGrasse Tyson says that God lives in the gaps, and the role of science is to push those gaps further and further and further and further back. And that's kind of true to an extent, because if you go back far enough, like we don't understand why the tides are happening. So obviously, it's a God that's making the oceans rise and the oceans fall. It's a God that's making the lightning strikes. It's gods that bring the seasons and bring the the rains and bring the harvest and bring the grains and bring, the gods do all these things. And as we understand what happens to the harvest, we know that that's not a god, that's a science. We know as the tides come in, that's not Neptune, that's science. Move the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, that's not a god, that's the rotation of the earth. You can send Apollo on his way. Um, an eclipse isn't a mystical dragon eating the sun, and then it's not being scared away or appeased by the blood of a virgin that's being sacrificed on the temple. So you can push those gods away. As we understand the world around us, the gods retreat further and further and further back into the darkness. But at the same time, when you get to the very, very edge of what it is, eventually you come down to the point of it's just random chaos, and we live in a world uh, where we live in a universe that just doesn't give a shit about our existence, and it's pure chaos, and literally anything can happen. Right now, I could have an aneurysm and be done, and that's not any more a standard roll of the dice than it is a capricious god looking down and saying, "Ha, let's make this happen this time." I don't know. Maybe we'll have a famine. We'll have a twisted intestine. Ha! Why not? It's either when you get to the edge of science and the edge of understanding, then you fall back to what makes you comfortable. And for some of us, it's one thing, and for some of us, it's another, and for even a whole other set, it's both. You can comfortably set feet in both of those ponds and do a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, and that's one of the fascinating things about this. That even as advanced apes who only learned how to use a wheel and axle 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, even as advanced apes that barely possess a comprehension of how fire works and what fire does, even as we live in a world where we use things that we don't know how they work, what goes into making them work. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm talking to a bunch of people through a monitor that works on LCD technology, and I couldn't tell you what LCD technology does. I know it's light emitting or LED light emitting diodes. I know that, but what does that even mean? A liquid plasma screen? Really? What does that even mean? Could I build one? No. Do I need to? No. I got people for that. We live in a world that is as magical today as it was in the 1400s, when you had ghosts and demons and witches and hexes, and we live in a world that's as magical today as it was then. It's just that our magic is a little bit more codified. We can explain it. We can do stuff with it. One of the things that always bothers me about the fucking Harry Potter series is because the thing that bothers me most is there's the magic is just random. It's like whatever they want to be able to do, they can just do it. It's levitation or fix your bone, or your arm's broken. Yeah, turn it to jello. Yeah, fix it. Grow the bone back. Whatever. You have a Patronus. You can turn you into a balloon. You can do whatever you want. Just wave shoot fireballs, fireball, or whatever. It doesn't make any sense. The stairs move, the pictures move, everything moves, everything's different, everything changes, everything. It doesn't make any sense. There's no mooring in reality, right? It's just whatever you want it to be. And things come up and things go. They had a whole time travel necklace thing in one of the movies, and just whatever. That's a plot device that just goes away. They don't even bother mentioning that again. Well, how nice would it be to be able to have a little time device necklace and go back in time and kill Voldemort when he was a 12-year-old kid at Hogwarts? But no, they don't think about that. Like, that could have ended the whole fucking series in the third movie. Like, oh, hey, why don't we do this? But the magic that we have now, you can be sitting in a metal tube on a slice of pavement that is about to send you 1,200 miles in 2 hours to another city, while you're talking, while you have in your hand a little box that you can text somebody who's 1,500 miles away in the other direction. And we don't live in a world that's magical? Guys, we live in the absolute fucking cutting edge future. We live in the future. We live in a magical time of technology that we don't even understand. It is amazing the world we live in. We should be more optimistic. We should absolutely be more optimistic. And I've thought about this too over the last few days. Um, like Gen X, my generation grew up with the very real prospect that civilization was going to collapse around us because of nuclear war. That our parents were going to fuck things up so badly that we were going to have to live in a bomb shelter for 9 months and then emerge from the bomb shelter and rebuild civilization from scratch. That was a real prospect in our life up through the mid 1980s. That's why you have people of my generation who hoard gold and fantasize about having to have skills that are useful in the world and drive a stick shift and all this other bullshit. These people are off their nut. They're lunatics because they grew up in a world that very, very, very realistically could have become a post-apocalyptic hellscape. All these zombie movies, they're born out of a fever dream of Gen Xers. We don't have to live in that world anymore. We do have to worry about the prospect of losing electricity. But you know what happens if you lose electricity? You just chill out and wait for the electricity to turn back on. That's all. You'll be fine. Worst case scenario is you got to wait like 72 hours and the electricity turns back on. You got to huddle under some blankets, turn on the fireplace, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. We don't live in the post-apocalyptic hellscape world that we were worried about in the mid 80s. We live in a magical time where technology has solved so many problems. We have to invent problems that don't exist. We have to invent problems, banking crises that don't exist. We have to invent aliens that have infiltrated our government ranks. We have to invent the Illuminati. We have to invent, yeah, that's going to put me on the list just saying that out loud, right? We have to invent vast conspiracies, international cabals of conspiracy-minded billionaires who are putting chemicals and chemtrails to control the population and blah blah, microchips and vaccines and other fucking nonsense. We live in a future where we have to make up boogeymen. We have to magically invent boogeymen in our mind because we can't be content with how good we have it. And don't get me wrong, there's some systemic shit out there. There's this whole existential crisis about corporations completely fucking the entire world and pitching us into a climate disaster where we will go into a downward population spiral and die off in the next 100 years. That's a real possibility. But it's not something that we can't overcome. It's not something it's not a problem that can't be solved. We can literally solve even that problem because we have the ability to do it. We just need to decide to do it. And that's why I'm so fucking optimistic about not just my generation, but my kids' generation and the generation after that. We can literally solve all of the problems facing us right now. We just have to want to do it. And that's the big challenge. We have to have enough people who want to do it, and then we can do it. We just have to have enough people want to do it all at the same time. That's it. Just enough people who want to do it who are placed in the right positions. Because it's not enough just to have enough people who want to do it. You have to have enough people who want to do it who can then put people in leadership positions to then go forward and do it. Because there's enough people who don't want to do it, who have a lot of money and a lot of leverage, they can stop the people who want to do it from getting it done. So, yeah, that's why I'm so fucking optimistic. I'm insanely optimistic. Um, Probably more optimistic than I should be, but what the fuck do I care? I'll be dead in 30 years anyway. 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, somewhere in the neighborhood. Um, Mind warp discussion. Yep. Um, we should discuss the shape of a Pringle chip. A Pringle chip. They're crisps. Thank you. Uh, Gotta ask Kamala about the Kamala. You change the light, then remade into matter at some. Yeah, that's like the whole like the literal like concept behind teleportation. Convert you into energy, ship you off somewhere else. Oh, but that's a whole nother discussion. Like if you get converted to energy and then that energy is sent off somewhere else and then you get rematerialized into a physical form, what happens to your previous physical body? Like, would you teleport if the energy coalesced into another body if it meant that your previous body was just left behind and was like follow what I'm saying? Like your energy, like all that was left behind was your mass, right? You were just like a puddle of goop in the previous portal, and like all the energy transported out and dropped down and congealed into another physical form, possibly not even recognizable from the previous form, right? Bloop, you're in a new physical form, and your old physical form is just a gooey puddle of mud, pus, and junk. Would you do it? That's the edge of science and philosophy right there. Do you cease to be a person? Do you become a new person? Like how do you define personhood? Ah, we did watch Men in Black this week. On our road trip. Men in Black was one of the last movies that I watched. What was the Men in Black? What was the what's the context of that? What's Men in Black? Ah, anyway, I don't know what the context was of that comment, but yeah, I actually did. We watched Men in Black this week too. When I was on vacation. Dude, this is one of the things that happens when I go on vacation. I'm sitting out there and I'm among the trees and the wildflowers and the deer, and we saw a herd of wild boar. But I'm just there. I'm just there and I'm chilling, and like my mind just goes, and I think of all the stuff. Ah, so much fun. Travel light years and remain the same. Oh, because the little aliens. Yeah, because that was part of their title sequence. But that's also part of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's a vignette in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Um, you arrive, no time for you has passed. Yeah. How aliens travel light years and remain the same. They turn themselves to the light. Did they have block and tackles, levers, hydraulic methods with water? We talk about aliens to make a better light bulb. All right. Speaking of which, my light bulb. What better? That's better. Um, okay. Mr. Jiggs is in the party. Cheers, Mr. Jiggs. So how was the huge stones of rock get moved into this? Brute force, Vanessa Kitty. Brute force. They had levers, they had a shit ton of people, and they had a shit ton of time. Brute force. They had 1,000 people pulling a rock, but everyone had Boston baked beans before pulling. Would all that gas be expelled? Jesus Christ. You think ancient humans used water to do work and controlled it? Probably so. I think it's a fair bet that they used water to transport them. They transport some of the blocks. They put it on a raft and then flood a channel and then bring it down the river to where it needed to go. I don't doubt that. That wouldn't be surprising at all. Um, Chariots were used in Egypt 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago in China, But as you say, unless we know the actual construction of the axle, right? And 4,000 years ago would be 2000 BC. 5,000 years ago would be 3,000 BC, and 33 3,000 to 3,500 BC is when Siri said that the wheel and axle was invented. And the chariot was a huge development in Egypt. They were technologically superior to all of their neighbors because they had the wheel and axle. The wheel and axle made the chariot possible. Without the wheel and axle, you couldn't have a chariot. It would have been impossible to have a chariot without a wheel and axle. When they really started rolling forward, yes, yes, indeed. If everyone Boston baked beans at the same time, that was an episode of Futurama. That is how they solved global warming. They pushed the Earth farther away from the sun by having all of the robots face one direction and belch at the same time. And whether or not it spins another way or slows down is not something you have to think about because it's just silly. I'm not going to talk about flat Earth. How long have we been making round objects? I'm pretty sure we've been making round objects forever, ever since people have been making objects, bowls, plates, cups, etc. When was a water wheel first used? Okay, so a water wheel would have been an innovation past the that's a combination of wheel and axle and lever, because that's when you have a wheel and axle, but the axle is fixed on the wheel, so when the wheel spins, the axle spins. So that's a variation of the wheel and axle, but Hey Siri, was a water wheel invented before or after the wheel and axle? The first water wheel. History of the water wheel per ThoughtCo. What is this? It's an ancient device that uses flowing or falling water to create power. The shaft of the wheel, the first reference to a water wheel dates back to around 4000 BCE. So right around the time when you had the wheel and axle. An engineer who died in 14 CE was credited with creating and using a vertical water wheel during Roman times. The wheels were used for crop irrigation and grinding grains, as well as to supply drinking water to villages. So around 4000 BC was the first documented use of a water wheel, which would have slightly predated by about 700 years the first use of a wheel and axle. Because if the wheel and axle was 33, the water wheel was at 4,000. That's about 700 years predating, and that makes sense. I mean, the technology is similar, and you're talking about grinding grains. Using water power to grind grains. Lever. A water wheel is basically a big old lever. Using a big 20-foot, 30-foot, 40-foot wheel with water flowing over it in order to grind grains and use that force of water to spin a giant wheel to turn a small shaft to crank a grinding wheel to grind grains. That makes perfect sense. And water wheels were what drove the initial industrial expansion in England. Water wheels that turned giant crankshafts, which ran looms, which built blocks and tackles for Her Majesty's Navy, which ran hammers, which ran saws. Water wheels ran sawmills and mills of all kinds, grain mills, mills of all kinds, back prior to steam engines. But what happened when the steam engine was developed was you could now separate your factory from a windmill or river, and now you didn't have to have towns along rivers. You could have the river was important for a town as a port to send goods elsewhere, but you could have factories away from water. You could have factories in the middle of plains. You could have factories away from the river and further inland. It opened up a larger space where you could have industrial zones within cities, and steam engines made entire cities capable of producing goods rather than just factories along a river and the part of the city that was along the river. So steam. That's another reason why steam engines were such a big. The development of steam engines was such a big deal for the Industrial Revolution because now you can have. You didn't have to have a river. You could have hell. You didn't even have a fast flowing river. You could have factories anywhere, anywhere that you could get coal, gas, or uh, coal, gas, and water to run a steam engine. That's all you needed. Booyah. Onward. And 11:56 is 12:27. I'm clawing my way back. We're only 30 minutes behind now. You move closer to the speed of light, your mass becomes effectively infinite. Now, it goes the other direction. Your mass becomes infinitely small as you move close to the speed of light, right? The energy required to move your mass becomes infinite. The closer to the speed of light the closer you approach the speed of light, the energy required to move your mass becomes infinite. Your mass stays the same. If you reduce your mass, you reduce the energy required. If you reduce the mass to zero, the energy required becomes zero. Right? Yeah, something like that. Diameter of cyclotron used in CERN. I don't know. I have not the slightest idea the answer to that question. Why the diameter of the cyclotron has to be like, I have no fucking idea. Fart on the moon, we fart actually orbit the moon. I think if you fart on the moon, it stays in your spacesuit, and you have to fucking breathe that fart forever. Descartes' theorem is, I think, therefore I am. My existence can be proven by the fact that I have thoughts. Is what it cognito ergo sum. I believe is the Latin phrase. Cognito ergo sum. Makes her trying to be digital. They lack length. I believe if you live long enough, you will be able to embrace your cyborg future. Dude, we are progressively moving towards a cyborg future. Like, how many phone numbers do you know? Like, how many phone numbers do you actually know? Right? Like, how much of your knowledge base is held in the internet? You know what I mean? Like, we're moving towards a cyborg future. We just haven't implanted the cyborg net into our brain yet, and it's going to happen. Probably in my lifetime, it's going to happen. My theory is why the Empire wanted such a long wall. The universal language. Given out Android 1718, actually cyborgs ended up turning out, I would be okay with that. Asimov's Foundation series, just linked. Jay's in the house. Cheers, Jay. J-A, to be specific. Welcome to the party. As of 15 minutes ago. 15 minutes ago, yes. Different was apocalyptic in the 80s. I did. I absolutely did. We didn't, I mean, I was a kid. We didn't realize it, but the skills we learned, and they still do the skills today through the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, making fire starters, how to build shelter, how to purify water, all that stuff. There's survival skills, camping skills. I mean, I went out and camped all the time when I was a kid. I still go out and camp all the time now as a fucking grown up. But we were full on learning post-apocalyptic skills, like how to build shelter, how to rebuild society. We didn't know that's what we were doing, but we people of a certain generation, me, my generation, we still fantasize about being able to do these things. You see the posts on Facebook of people who are like, yeah, just put some of these fucking millennials in a car with a stick shift and see what they're gonna fucking do. The thing is, you put a millennial in a car with a stick shift, he's gonna figure out how to drive a manual transmission car. It's not that hard. We joke about being able to pass secret messages to each other because we write in cursive. They'll figure it out. It's not that complicated. I mean, these kids are fucking smart. They know how to code. We don't know how to code. They know how to create video games and apps and shit like that. We don't know how to do that. Some of us do, but we don't know how to do it. That was not the skill set that we learned as kids. We learned as kids the skill set of how to survive nuclear war. There's not going to be a nuclear war. And if there's going to be a nuclear war, we're not going to be the ones surviving it. We're going to be fucked. We're dead. We will be dead. The 20-somethings are the ones that are going to inherit the earth. Us, we're done. And we wouldn't want to survive a nuclear war. We're in our 40s and 50s now. We don't want to survive a nuclear war. We don't want to live in a world without air conditioning. We don't want to live in a world without cars. We don't want to have to walk to the fucking grocery store to get food that we have to purify and cleanse. We don't want that. We've lived 45 years of our life not having to deal with this shit. 55 years of our life, 65 years of our life. We don't want to have to deal with that shit anymore. We've spent our prime doing what we were told was supposed to be done. They changed the goddamn rules on us 3 times in our lifetime. All we want to do at this point is make sure that our kids and our kids' kids and our kids' kids' kids don't have to live through the apocalyptic hellscape that we trained for. That's what we want to do. We want to prevent the end of the world. Most of us want to prevent the end of the world from it. There's still some fucking lunatics out there who are like, I can't wait for the government to come and try to take my fucking guns. They're not going to survive the apocalypse. They're going to be miserable, fucking horrible people for the rest of their goddamn short, miserable lives. And that's fine. Let them be miserable, horrible people. I encountered one of them at the post office today, and thankfully I was able to hold my tongue and not be able to go, well, actually, ugh, they're the fucking worst. But the truth is, if shit goes tits up, like, we're the ones on the iceberg now. We're the generation that's going to be like, they're going to be like, look, y'all are resource intensive. We don't need y'all. We can't replace your knees anymore. We can't replace your hips. Your backs hurt. Like, y'all got to get healthy in the next 6 months or y'all are done for. And we got a choice to make. We're done. Like, if shit goes bad, we are finished. We don't even, there's not enough wildlife in the urban areas to support the whole population. And guess who gets pushed out on the iceberg first? Damn right. We're the ones who are going to go. The kids are going to string us up and eat us. Because that, I mean, we got to be good for something, right? Hey, there's a handful of us that'll be like, this is how you make fire. And all the kids will be like, we know. You just take a battery and put it in. We saw the YouTube videos like 20 years ago. Dumb. Get out of here. They know. They know. They don't need us. They'll do just fine without us. If shit, our best interest as a generation to ensure our survival to the ripe old age of 75 to 110 years old, however old we're going to be, our best interest as a generation is to make sure that the horrific hellscape that we trained for as kids never happens. Our best interest as a generation is to bring about a world for the kids so that they survive to their 150 years old. Because they're going to be 50 years older than we are, just like we're 50 years older than our grandparents were. Our best case scenario as a generation is to do absolutely everything in our power to make sure that the world we're handing over is a better world. Because if we make sure the world we're handing over is a shit world because we're going to be dead, we're going to be the ones on the iceberg. If there's any icebergs left, we're going to be the ones shoved out into the ocean to die. Because, if there's only 75% of only enough food to feed 75% of the population, guess which 25% of the population they're getting rid of? It's not going to be the babies. It's not going to be the middle productive part. It's going to be the old fuckers. They're going to make sure that the unproductive guys, the Social Security crew, the AARP team is out. So, heads up, rest of Gen X. We're speeding into the boomer world. You either get on the program in the next 30 years or get onto the iceberg to get shoved out into the ocean where that iceberg will melt because of policies that us and our parents decided were more important than saving the fucking world. Wake up! It's not being woke, it's being realistic, kids. Wake up. Anyway. The EMP blast. Well, you see, that's just the thing. The EMP blast. That's what I'm saying. The EMP blast goes. Everything goes out. It's going to be a 3-week transition. The Gen Z will be like, "All right, let's fucking rebuild this shit." And there's not enough food to go around. Guess who dies? Yup. Because guess what, Gen X? You don't know how to rebuild after an EMP bomb either. Most humans today are already zombies. Yeah, I'm actually kind of on board with that too because I walk around and I see people who are like into their phones. They have their headphones on and they're not paying attention to the world around them. And it's like, dude, you're gonna run into a goddamn pole. Like, put that down. What is wrong with you? Ugh. Twins stay offline 2 days a week. That's a good. We used to have Little House days. When our kids were younger, we'd have Little House nights where we basically would throw the breaker and go without electricity for a couple of nights a month. Universe Marvel Alien Kid. Yep, I remember. Makes you. That was also. I think that was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as well. With like you zoom out and the universe was in a bubble of water, and there was another drop, and there were several other droplets that were other universes. I think that was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy too. I can't remember, but I remember reading that in a book with pages and stuff. How often does the Gregorian calendar repeat months and days? I have no idea. 365 divided by 7. 52 and let's see here. It's 52 and with 1 or 2 days. So it'd be every like 7 years, I think, or 8 years. When January 1st, if January 1st is a Monday, it would be another 8 years, I think, before January 1st is another Monday. Right? Right? I mean, now I have to look. I don't know. But it's different because of leap years, right? So January 1st, this year was a Sunday. December 31st is a Sunday, so it moves over 1 day. So when's the next time January 1st will be a Monday? January 1st is a Wednesday. So it goes from Monday to Wednesday to Thursday. Next year should be a Friday, right? Friday, 27. 28 should be a Sunday again. Nope. Saturday on January 2028. Then Monday on the 2029. Tuesday. Wednesday. Thursday. This one should be Saturday if I'm following the pattern. Saturday. So next year, 34, February 30, 2034. Okay, so this year it was a Sunday, and this is 2023. So 2034, that's every 11 years. But that doesn't hold true with leap years, and because the leap year isn't exactly every 4 years. A Sunday happened in our how long? Say January 1 on a Sunday. Yeah, 11 years from now, 2034. How many calendars must you use before the day and date repeat in the same day and day? 60,000 years. No. 14 calendar patterns. Right. Because and that's what we saw. It's 11, actually, because it starts at Sunday, then it goes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then skips a day to Saturday, and it goes back to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It takes 11 years in this case. And no, it wouldn't matter if we were in the middle of the cycle. It takes about 11 years. So the question is, if I move forward from 3034, 11 years, to 30 or 20, let's see, 2034 to, what's 11 years after that? 2045? 2045. January 2045. Would that, yep, January 2045, Sunday the 1st. And then go to 56. If we go to 2056, will it also be Sunday, January 1st? Nope. It moves back a day to Saturday. So it's every 11 years until it's not. Let's go to 57. Will it work on January 57? Nope, January 57 is a Monday. What about 55? Nope, January 55 is a Friday. 54? Nope, Thursday. Okay, so let's go forward to 58. This is actually oddly fascinating. January 58 is a Tuesday. It looks like it skips a year. 59? It wouldn't be 59 because that's going to be Wednesday. 60 is a Thursday. So it's going to be, yeah, it skips this cycle. So it's every 11 years until it's not. And then it's up. There it is, 62. It's every 11 years until it should have been 57. Then it was, ugh. Ah, fuck, that hurts my brain. I don't want to think about this, Vanessa. Shut up. Leave me alone. Minimum gap of 6 years and maximum gap of 40 years. Effective mass approaches infinity. I think I really do think it's the energy that moves the mass, because my mass doesn't change. Anyway, doesn't matter. Good night, Ting Ting. Cheers. Appreciate it. Have a great night. 12:31, 12:40. We're only 15 minutes behind on chat. I learned programming in school. I learned literally basic, the basic language. Uh, 10, go to 10 or go to 40, and it skips to 40, and then go to 10, go to 20, it goes back to 20, and 20 is turn 90 degrees. 30 is go forward uh, 6 pixels or whatever. Yeah. On machines that seem ancient today. Cheers. So, well, Vanessa Kitty's heading out. Cheers, Vanessa. Good night. I am wrapping up in 15 minutes. We are closing the doors at 1 p.m. And that's good. I've caught up in chat, so we can close the doors at 1 p.m. Guys, this has been fun. The conversation has spread all across the map, from scientific method to photons and philosophy and science and religion and holy guacamole, everything. Everything and nothing all at the same time. But as is the pattern of the show, the last 15 minutes, we do the same as we did in the first 15 minutes. News and updates for the distillery. The March 31st, we will do our 2,000 subscriber special. We are at 18,700 or 1,800, 18,000. 1,870. The official number is 71. 1,871 as of right now. And I would like to give a shout out to Brusel. I stitched one of his videos earlier today. He was saying that Evan Williams bottled in bond is the best whiskey or the best bourbon under $20 he can find in Alabama. And if there's any bourbon under $20 that's better, he should let him know. And I put a $20 bill on top of one of my bottles of bourbon and said, "Yeah, this is under $20. I think I did it." And of course, my bourbon is definitely more than $20 because I do not make factory shit. I make handcrafted bourbons. But that said, shout out to Brusel. He makes good content. So y'all go check him out at Brusel. I'm gonna give him drop him Brewzle. Go check him out. He's good people. He makes good content. He's good people. He doesn't need my help shouting him out, but he's kind of cool. Go check him out. So we're doing our 2,000 subscriber special at the end of the month, giving away a bottle of my bourbon. Giving away a bottle of the bourbon as well as, do I have a picture of the thing? Pick one. Where's that? Let's see here. Nope, that's not it. Get rid of that. Let's do, I need to add a, what is it, graphic? Image, media, what am I looking for? Capture device? No, come on. Producer, Greg, tell me what I'm looking for. Image, there it is. Got it. Pick one, is that what it's called? Thank you. There it is. So there you go. If you want, that is the 2,000. It's already there. Don't forget to hit your notification bells and all that shit. The 2,000 subscriber special is there. We will be giving away a bottle of our bourbon as well as a shot glass tote to go with that bourbon and a shot glass. So you have the whole Old Humble kit. You have the whole Old Humble kit at your disposal. Will also be, this is also, y'all get to know this first. This is the end of an era, our Boomtown Bourbon. So that giveaway bottle is going to be a last of an era. These bottles, the bottles that I bottle this month, my next day in the life special that I do, the bottles that I bottle this month will be the last of these bottles you will ever see me doing in the distillery ever again. So if you want one, you either got to buy one or you got to win one. There's only 2 ways to get your hands on them. And I'm not going to be giving away another one of these bottles for the foreseeable future. I don't know when that will ever happen again. I do not know Brusel personally. I know who he is. I know of him, but I don't know who he is. I know he lives in Alabama, but I've never met him personally. I would love to meet him, have him on the show, have him try my whiskey. But for $18, I always tell people that when you buy cheap bourbon, you pay for it every time you drink it. But there is such a thing. I also tell people that it's there that and price and preference are not correlated. You do not have to spend $500 to get a good premium quality whiskey. You can get whiskey that you like for under $20. You can buy whiskeys that you like for $20 to $40. You can buy whiskey that you like from $40 to $50. That is completely and totally within the realm of reasonable. Expensive does not equal good. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into the pricing of whiskey. If I could afford to charge $15 for a bottle of whiskey, I would fucking do it. But the reality is, if I charged $15 for a bottle of whiskey, I couldn't fucking pay rent. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to make whiskey for $15. But the fact is, the reason why I focus on quality and do everything I can to make my whiskey taste good, unique, special, and identifiably better, empirically better than other whiskeys is because I have to charge $60 for a bottle. I would give a whole lot less shits if I could charge $15 a bottle and sell 200,000 units a month. But I can't. I can't afford to. I don't. My market's not that big. I wish it was. If I was selling 200,000 units a month, Jesus Christ, that would be an entirely different production model than what I have right now. But as it is, I'm excited to sell 25 cases a month. We're a small business. We're a small business. We do a small volume. We do 400. What would 25 cases a month times 12 is 300 and something cases a year, 360 cases a year. That's a big fucking deal for us. But that's neither here nor there. That's shop talk. Y'all don't need shop talk. Y'all can get shop talk in a day in the life stuff. You don't need that tonight. Tonight's happy hour talk. So we're going to be working on a project with Ryan Adam Wells. I'm going to be going out to Darwin tomorrow night to talk to him about that. I'm going to be working on a couple of more day in the life videos where I do behind the scenes stuff, where we'll be filtering our whiskey. I think the whiskey is filtered. At this point, I am not filtering. I have one more filtration to go with the next batch of whiskey, and then we'll be bottling and labeling. But I have the rest of the shot glass totes to make in preparation for the Texas Whiskey Fest and the HTX Whiskey Weekend. So that's going to be at least 3 day in lives that I have going on. And then we have road shows. I'm working on a concept for like street team videos where I get like live testimonials from people who try the whiskey. But I'm working on a bunch of shit. I got a bunch of shit in the works. And I'm trying to be good. Like my first priority, of course, is running the business. My second priority is doing family stuff. The third priority is this nonsense. But I'm trying to be a good YouTube steward and promote my business and promote my channel. So I really do appreciate you guys participating in the community, help me grow my community, help me grow the channel, sharing the word, being Old Humble Distilling Company channel ambassadors. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. We'll turn them into friends. All the stuff that we need to do. We need 129 more subscribers by the end of the month. If I don't have 2,000 on March 31st, I am not giving away this bottle of whiskey. Y'all can just suck at my butthole. And I will work the giveaway in a way that longtime loyal followers will get more chances to win than people who just show up on the last day. But, it's not going to be a huge advantage. It'll be a slight advantage, but not a huge advantage. You don't have to tell them. Um, I'm watching. Don't worry. We'll figure it out. I wanted to be fair. I wanted to be equitable. I would much rather, if we're giving away a bottle, I want it to go into the hands of someone that has supported the channel over a long time rather than someone who's just like shown up on the 31st and like, hey, I'm your 2030-second subscriber. Yay me. I got here exactly for 12 minutes of a show. But at the same time, I appreciate those guys too. So um, I'll figure out a way to make it equitable. Maybe we'll give away 2 bottles. Maybe we'll give away a sample set. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do, but somebody's going to walk away with a bottle of whiskey, a tote, and a shot glass on our 2,000 subscriber special. 1,871 is where we stand. Make that number go up to 1,900 next time I'm here. Next time I'm here next week, I want that to be 1,900. If that's not 1,900, I'm going to look at y'all with that dad look. Hang on. Let me see if I can... let me change the camera real quick. I'll give you that dad look. Let me see. Yeah. You sense the disappointment. You sense it. You should. Because that's the dad look. You earned that. You earned it. You earned it. If you don't tell people, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to tell people. I'm going to spread the word. I've got my YouTubes and Twitters and Facebooks and all the stuff. I'll spread my word. Y'all need to do your part. You do your part. I'll do my part. We'll all get together. All right. So all that said, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, I am, have been, and will continue to be your spirit guide, the old humble guy, your friendly neighborhood sin merchant. Next time you see me, I will still be the old humble guy, and you will not. There's nothing we can do about that. Cheers to all y'all. Boop. Good night. Be awesome to each other. And until we meet again, don't waste time on bad whiskey. Spend your time on the good stuff. Good night. Do. Closing the show with a production screen. You know what occurred to me? You know what occurred to me? I did the toast, but I never actually drank the whiskey. So, once again, I am, have been, and will continue to be the old humble guy. And next time I see you, you won't be. That's just how it is. Cheers to all y'all. Good night. Continue to be awesome to each other. Cheers.